Yes, good Saturday afternoon, everybody. This is Eddie Huff. This is Fresh Black Coffee. And we have our usual lineup of myself and Dave Van Risingham. We have a special guest today in the house, and that is the former state senator from Oklahoma, Mike Mazzei, and very possibly the next governor of the state of
That's
Oklahoma.
Right.
And Mike's here to talk to us about that today.
Mm-hmm.
And but before we do that, let's just talk in general with Mike and get some expert opinion. See, because here's why. I mean, we've got a twofer today,
Mm-hmm.
political and financial.
Mm-hmm.
Mike is a financial expert.
Indeed I am, Eddie.
Yes, there you go. There you go. No, seriously though, Mike is a financial services. What is your title exactly?
Well, I'm a certified financial planner, and I'm one of the few folks in the industry, Eddie, that have a master planner advanced studies designation because I have a master's degree in financial planning.
Okay, well, see, so there you go. So he knows his stuff. So Mike, let's get right into this. The stock market had a precipitous fall this week. I mean, it's like every day I kept looking, and and now me having been involved in this for a number of years now, back to 87. So it doesn't bother me. In fact, I get kind of excited.
Prices get cheaper, and
exactly.
Got to figure out when the right time is to buy.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Now, this is something that might be good for us to discuss, because one theory is to buy a little bit as you go down, because you can't time it exactly. Somebody probably can, but I can't. Let's put it that way.
Bottoms are.
Exactly. So, I've been buying a little bit every time it drops 1,000 points or so. You buy a little more, you buy a little more, buy a little more.
And a little short-term dollar cost averaging, we call it.
Right. Exactly. But so give us kind of a synopsis and your idea of why we're having this fall.
Well, the stock market's going through a 10 to 15% correction. And during this latest bull market that started at the end of 2022, we've had a nice run up in prices and, wealth creation for American investors. And we're due for a 10 to 15% correction. Part of this is an emotional reaction created by the fear of the tariff battles that our president has initiated to reset the playing field, because we've been taken advantage of for far too long.
You remember the hearings after 9/11? The commission said they were at war with us, but we were not at war with them. Isn't that true on the tariff scene? Everybody's been hit nuts with tariffs, but we haven't rejoined them.
We've been allowing for decades other countries to take advantage of our great system of free market capitalism and the buying power of the American consumer. So the easy way to look at it, just in broad economic terms, I heard this from one of my favorite economists just this past week. If you take all the countries, Dave, that send us, their goods, we only on average charge them about 2% to have access to the American economy. But all those other countries combined, they charge us about 15% for us to have access to their economies and their consumers.
Trump's been talking about this, 80% on a Harley, 100% on a Cadillac. But you're saying average all goods about 15%.
Yeah.
Okay.
put everything together.
Mhm.
And what people seem to forget is in 2018, when President Trump said, we've got to get some better deals with Mexico and Canada and everybody else, we're going to initiate some tariffs. The market had an emotional reaction and prices went down for a little bit. But remember that once the tax cuts by President Trump got in place, and once there were less regulations, and once there was lower energy prices, the economy boomed. And of course, we had super wage growth across all demographics, and the market took off, and things were rocking and rolling in 2019 up until we hit the pandemic. So more than likely, that's what's going to happen again, and the president will lead us towards better, more fair trade deals once our trading partners out there go, okay, it's time to negotiate, and we need them. I'm sorry, they need us a lot more than we need them.
Yeah, that's what it's so refreshing to hear someone who actually is in that industry and has an understanding to say that, because my suspicion is there's a lot of naysayers out there. And I suspect a lot of it is not really dealing with true economics. It's dealing more with politics. They just don't like Trump, and they're trying to use this against him and preaching doom and gloom about this. And so it's really refreshing to hear someone specifically from the financial area and investment area speak positively, because that's what I feel. And as I said, if we don't panic, if we will stay the course and just keep investing a little bit here and there as it goes down, when it rebounds, and it will, at some point it has to, because the people who are maybe doing this on purpose, selling, at some point, they're not going to have anything left to sell. Their greed is going to come back on them, and they're going to say, well, maybe I've sold too much. Now it's time to buy. And once they start buying again, that's when everything takes off like a rocket ship. So no, I'm really glad to it really makes me feel good to hear that. So yeah, a little bit of your background. You came here originally to attend Oral Roberts University.
1983.
Where from?
ORU. At the time, my dad was stationed at Scott Air Force Base, just east of St. Louis. So our family was residing in Southern Illinois.
So you two are both brats.
Yeah, we're
military
both military brats.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, the best people in the world.
That's all right.
It's a special breed.
Yeah.
Drop us anywhere and we'll make a friend.
Exactly.
After moving all over.
Yeah, you get good at it, Mike, don't you?
You have to.
Yeah. Yeah, except Eddie was at Dodd schools all over Europe too, right?
Yeah, I was at a DOD school in South Korea for a little while.
Okay.
See, there you go.
There you go.
He covered Asia, I covered Europe.
Yeah.
So, which is kind of funny. The white guys in Asia and the black guys in
He
Europe.
wore later hose. What did you wear?
Hopefully not a sarong.
I just wore good old American clothes to high school in South Korea.
Oh yeah.
But a big parka because it was freezing.
Oh yeah.
Those southern Siberian winds.
Yes.
I had walked to school every day because it wasn't too far from our house.
I think that's
wore a big parka.
I think that's what made the Korean War, when we got involved, one of the roughest.
Oh yeah, my dad was there. I mean, we grew up central Minnesota. He said, "I've never felt cold like Korea."
Yeah, I can imagine. Again, it makes you think and appreciate what those who came before us went through and put up with. The Argonne forest there in France, and then the Korean conflict, and of course our own Valley Forge and some of those, you think about
true American heroes.
Yes. So you came here, you went to Oral Roberts for 2 years. And then you were telling me earlier, you answered the call of a senator. Was it a senator or a congressman?
United States Senator Gordon Humphrey from New Hampshire.
Right. And
ironically.
What did he? And this was in the middle of your college education at ORU. After your sophomore year,
back in the 80s, the Reagan Revolution, the pro-life fight was, really pushing changes, and Senator Humphrey wanted a pro-life task force built within his office of the U.S. Senate, and they needed a staff assistant to handle correspondence and errands. And my most important job, though, Eddie, for Senator Humphrey was going to this special location in Washington, D.C. to pick up his chocolate yoo-hoos.
For those of you that don't know, it's a drink. It's a chocolate juice.
I did that for 7 months in the middle of my college experience.
And then you decided to stay up there, and you attended George Mason.
That's where I got my government affairs, government and politics bachelor's degree.
And then after that, then you ended up getting a master's in.
That was much later already when I was in the financial.
So when you first
planning profession.
So you had started in the financial planning profession with a government.
No. Well,
with your major, it wasn't a finance major that you had when you entered into the financial services market.
I always kind of wanted to develop some sort of career in both business and public service. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, when I moved back to Tulsa, because all my wonderful friends were back here, and I just fell in love with Tulsa and Oklahoma, I came back here in 1988 and was fortunate to get a job with a local small independent investment company. And that began my financial planning career. Pretty soon after that, I attended the College for Financial Planning to go through the program to become a board certified financial planner.
I see. Now, when in all this...
was not, I got certified in 1994.
Okay. And in all of this time, what period was it where you met your bride?
Well, that was a wonderful season of life, and I talked her into a date in March of 1989, and we got married in June of 1990. Mm-hmm. She didn't like me to talk about this too much, but she was the ORU homecoming queen.
Hey, done good. Hey, I wanted to ask.
Yes, Dave.
I think you and Matt Pinnell have a few things in common. Both an ORU alum,
right?
Now his degree is in marketing, and that,
okay.
but or at least that's how he explained it to me. Maybe I'm glossing over, but you're probably one of your biggest feats of marketing after getting the homecoming queen to marry you, getting your family to relocate here, because you're an Oklahoman by choice.
Yes.
And your dad, after a career in military, decided he would settle here, right?
Well, first I got my brother
to
move here, and it was me and a good opportunity, actually, with one of Oklahoma's best and one of America's best engineering companies, Wallace Engineering.
Oh, yeah.
So my brother and sister-in-law move here, and we have 5 kids, and my brother has 5 kids, and
that'll do it.
In there, well, where's dad, going to move to?
Yep.
So my dad moves out here eventually as well. And so we have lots of Mazzeis in Tulsa, and my nieces, some of my kids went to ORU, and my brother's nieces are actually runners right now at ORU.
Okay.
Oh, I've got to throw this in real quickly because this is a little inside. I met his dad before I actually met him. I used to live in his Senate district, right?
Yeah.
And he came knocking. I wasn't there, and my wife told me, "Oh, the nicest guy came tonight. You missed him, and he's running for the Oklahoma State Senate." And some guy, Mazzei, you couldn't pronounce the name correctly, but anyway. And then I met your dad. That's how that whole started. But one thing that I wanted to discuss was the fact that you have built a name in the Oklahoma state house and being the kind of the fiscal hawk and fiscal conservative. In fact, I want to throw out here, we have a grocery tax, what would you call it?
Exemption. Really.
Exemption. Now we've gotten rid of our state grocery tax statewide. The cities, for some reason, still have it going on, but statewide, it's gone. And I want everybody to know this is the gentleman you can thank for that, Mike Mazzei. Mike Mazzei's been on a quest to end the grocery tax for many years.
Well, we've had a long journey when it comes to tax relief for the people of Oklahoma. When I got into the Oklahoma Senate, the state income tax was in the 6% range. And back then we still had an estate tax and all sorts of, competitive disadvantages versus other states. And they were, our shoppers were fleeing to Texas and Missouri and Arkansas for back to school supplies and needs, for clothes for kids and, all that stuff. So over the course of time, when I was chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, we eventually lowered through bills that I authored the reduction in the state income tax to 5.25%. We eliminated the Oklahoma death tax, the estate. There is no Oklahoma estate tax. We launched the back to school sales tax holiday. We basically whittled down to almost nothing the business franchise tax. After I left, they got rid of it completely, which was great. So we've had lots and lots of tax relief for the Oklahoma consumers. Recently, I wasn't in the Senate, but recently the Oklahoma legislature and Governor Stitt eliminated the sales tax on groceries.
Right. But it was, you were the progenitor of it. You're the one who got us on that mission, because I remember I remember years ago. I mean, we're talking 10, 15 years ago, you were talking about it. And
all these other states are charging consumers for groceries. Why would Oklahoma want to keep doing that?
I still have a T-shirt from John Sullivan when he was state rep. Say no to grocery tax. That's from like 95.
Oh, really?
So a lot of people. You're part of a brigade that over decades has been fighting this fight.
Yeah. Well, my friends like Senator Dave Rader, Representative Chris Banning, here locally, they're the ones that actually pushed through the elimination of the state grocery tax. I was not at the Capitol.
So then you term limited out.
2016 was my last year in the Oklahoma Senate.
Right. And you went to work for this governor of ours.
Yeah. A few years later, I end up back at the Capitol as Governor Stitt's first Secretary of Finance, basically.
And so what was that like? I mean, can you tell us what you were involved in with Governor Stitt in your role as Secretary of Finance?
Well, as the finance guy for Governor Stitt, we orchestrated a budget strategy that our friends in the Senate and the House helped us with for I should say, the first time in the history of Oklahoma, we put extra money in the state savings accounts. Our system has some automatic deposits that are supposed to happen in what's called the State Rainy Day Fund. But during my time in the legislature, we launched an additional savings bucket called the Revenue Stabilization Fund. And for the first time in Oklahoma history, as I said, this budget of the governor's in 2019, we put $200 million in the Revenue Stabilization Fund So that lifted us to $1 billion in savings for the first time in Oklahoma history.
Which is about 10% of our budget, right? Roughly.
Yeah. The governor and I worked on, a plan where we really need to get states' reserves into the $2.5 billion range at the time when you looked at what the overall state budget and monthly expenses were. The first goal, Dave, was to get to that $1 billion. And fortunately, we had done that because we needed every penny to get through the budget year implications when COVID hit.
Yeah.
And then to Governor Stitt's credit and the members of the legislature, once the economy took off and got roaring again, they replenished it and now have built the state savings accounts to even higher levels around, $4 billion.
Wow. That's interesting. That's amazing. That's really good. That's really good. And so then you, after a couple of years doing that, then you went back to your practice.
Yeah. Came home and, focused still on the business.
Helping.
We got involved with public policy organization called the Committee for Oklahoma Prosperity.
I remember that.
And that kept me engaged in, important public policy issues and aware of what wasn't getting done in the education arena, what still wasn't getting done in dealing with our tax code.
I recall a couple other lawmakers signed up for that with you. Weren't there like 3 of you that started it?
Well, there was a whole collaboration.
Okay.
Senator Dave Rader, my state senator, was very much involved in the launch of that. And fortunately, as it grew and grew, Dave, we started having quarterly public policy breakfast forums. And my state rep, Mark Tedford, got involved as well. And so we had this nice group collaborating on very important public policy issues, and we'd have successful small business owners attend these events along with several local state legislators.
Okay. I got a question, if I could. Let's play Magic Wand time.
Okay.
Governor Mike Mazzei.
Lord willing.
Yeah. If you could just wave your wand and see some changes, give me 3 or 4 things you'd like to see change in how government in Oklahoma does things.
Let's because that was going to be my next thing.
Yeah.
Because we haven't mentioned this yet, Mike is now officially running to be the next governor of the state of Oklahoma.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
I did mention it?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. But anyway, I
we go.
Take it a little step, because the other evening he had a coming out. I would call it kind of a gala kickoff event. Yeah, it was quite an event. I have to say, a lot of people,
a lot of fun. 250 people.
Yeah,
some great participation and help from our friends like Congressman Josh Burkeen came and announced his public endorsement, and that was pretty exciting. And we had an amazing testimonial from my good friend and very successful businessman, Sean Copeland, the CEO of Regent Bank, and
pastor.
Great event. My
Asbury.
pastor for 20 plus years, Tom Harrison, is one of our honorary co-chairs, and he kicked off the evening with some comments, but more importantly, prayer.
Right. What really impressed me, though, I have to say, the reason I wanted to mention this is because I was just kind of impressed.
When do I get the magic wand, Eddie?
Dave's got the magic wand.
Okay.
No, what I was impressed by was the diversity in the crowd that night.
Yeah, that was special.
It really stood out. And I'm not just talking of racial diversity. I'm just speaking diversity in people. I was just, every time I turned around, I saw they were all generally Republicans, but you had moderates, some that you might consider not as moderate, some staunchly conservative. You had the 9/12 people there. You had the tariff people. You had the this, the that, the Tulsa Women, Republican Women's Club. You had a representation, and you had some pretty high up, officials, and you had some pretty low people like myself there. And but no, my wife and I, we really were thinking this is pretty amazing to get that diverse of a group of, because a lot of times these people don't get together.
Some of them don't like each other.
Yeah.
But they like Mike.
But they like Mike. Yeah, but they like Mike. So anyway, I just wanted to say that to me spoke of good things, looking forward. So now, Dave, your magic wand.
Oh, yes. I'm passing it off, metaphysically.
Yes. I mean, yeah.
It's your magic wand, Mike. What are we going to do?
Well, our first priority, Dave, is to tackle this massive issue and problem in that only 20% of our 8th graders can read proficiently.
Mm-hmm.
And
20%. Wow.
This is the latest statistics from the national data, looking at all the states. And it's called the nation's report card. And you work out those numbers, Eddie, and that means 550,000 Oklahoma students are going through the system and they can't read proficiently. Therefore, they're not going to be prepared for a great job and they're not going to be prepared for life. But other states have tackled this problem, and we want to duplicate those successful models, because if we hire or appoint, however we can work it out with the state legislature, a statewide literacy director, which is what they did in the state of Mississippi, and dedicate tens of millions of dollars to the proper assessment at the beginning of the school years of where our kids are in terms of mastery of reading or lack thereof. And we hire reading specialists and we hire tutors, and we get completely rid of this liberal disaster of word-based reading, and we get back to how we all learned, phonics and sounding out words, and get that curriculum and that process back in the schools. We can resurrect or have an emergency reading sufficiency program. When I was in the state Senate and we were finally working on education reform, we were 49th in reading outcomes and Mississippi was 50th.
Yeah, 50.
Well, today, Mississippi's 22 in the nation and we're still 49th. And so we are sounding the alarm bell. It is time to have Trump-like action to do what is necessary to fix this problem.
The only thing I'd say on that, and I don't want to interrupt your magic wand session here, but as a homeschool parent, all 3 of my kids all the way through, first one, SRA Distar phonics, by the time he's ready for kindergarten, he's reading 2nd grade level. Okay. My next kid, phonics didn't work at all. Okay. They're both doing great, but all I want to say is I agree with you. Phonics is better, but just don't have a one size fits all for everybody. That's all I'm saying.
And that's why we need reading specialists, Dave. I also had a family that homeschooled for a while, and my wife, for 4 of the 5 kids, had to focus on phonics.
Yeah.
We had one kid that had an eye convergence problem, and she had to approach things, differently with her to get caught up. So you never, in any type of educational discipline, have a one size fits all for everything. But that's why you have reading specialists that know generally this is the way to go.
Good.
But if we assess every kid and we put the money into the right type of assessments and the right type of bringing reading specialists into the system, we can have flexibility for those other kids.
Yeah, and the only other thing I say that there's no substitute for the one-on-one. And parents, I have to say, too much have delegated out and think they don't play a role in their kids' education.
Yeah.
We know that the kids that excel well, their parents were always very involved.
Yeah.
Right.
We certainly
But
need parental involvement. But
I don't think you're going to fix that necessarily.
if our kids are spending 7-8 hours a day at school, 32, 36 weeks out of the year, there is time to teach these kids to read. And that has to become the statewide priority.
Yeah.
I hate to go back to this because I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. My kids started overseas.
I was in overseas schools.
Right. But no, in actual German schools.
Oh, gotcha.
Not DOTS, not Department of Defense. These were actual German. And so they went to school from 8 to noon.
Okay.
4 hours a day. That's all they did.
Right.
And I remember going to the kindergarten teacher. I'll never forget this. I mean, I can see her face clearly before me because my kids come home. Oh, look what we did. We drew this. We did this. We colored this. And we're in kindergarten.
Okay.
And we're talking like 3 months before first grade. And I said, I've got to see this kindergarten teacher, and I go, hey, when are these kids going to start learning to read or learn some math? And she looked at me and she started laughing. She says, like, what's wrong with you? We don't do that here. We don't do that till the first grade. And then she starts hitting me with this word, pedagogy.
Oh gosh.
Right.
That's a big word. What does it mean? I don't know.
It's
pedagogy is sort of the
science
of education, the discipline of education, the worldview of here's how we handle it.
I'm a professional. You're just a parent.
Right. Well, no, but okay. So she tells me this. I said, don't worry about it when they get to first grade. So they go to first grade. Within 6 weeks, they were reading. And I mean, reading proficiently.
Good.
And because they said the way the brain develops, see the colors that way, when you show red, you show the color red and RED, that's red. And the R's and then they start drawing the letters and they put the letters together and boom. And it's like a building block thing. But I was blown away because I was thinking this is going to be a disaster, 6 weeks, the kids are reading. You give them a book and they're reading. We came to America and how I don't know if you did this. My wife and I, we would spell in front of our kids because you didn't want to.
Of course, what parent doesn't?
Right. And so I'll never forget this. Our daughter, she was like,
to have secret communication for as long as possible.
Yeah. So we're there spelling in front of our 6-year-old and we're looking at it. She's going,
she gets it fast. Yeah.
She's figuring and she's putting words together as we're going down. She's reading street signs and starting to sound out these street signs. So it taught me that I think we put so much into this early childhood education and stuff where we're missing the focus of early childhood education. It's the type of education they're getting.
Well, education departments, as Dr. Jordan Peterson talks about, and he's brilliant, of course, is they got stupid in our universities a long time before the universities got stupid, because all these education departments in our colleges across America started going down this track of self-esteem and how do they feel about stuff. And then we eventually, went into social emotional learning, and they started adopting all these kind of crazy emphasis instead of reading, math, and civics basics.
Okay, so magic wand.
That was number one.
Yes,
I still get a second, or I still get two other.
Oh yes.
Right?
Move us along.
Magic wand, Number two is we do want to fundamentally transform the tax code.
Okay.
With an actual strategy to become a no income tax state, because we've got this huge competitive disadvantage against or versus the no income tax states. Tennessee is a good comparison versus Oklahoma when you consider basic, landlocked, population size, that sort of thing.
Nevada.
And Nevada in some cases as well. But job and population growth is 10, 20, 30% bigger than what we have in the no income tax states versus what we have in Oklahoma. And we've wasted some of our opportunities to get there faster because of hundreds of millions of dollars that have gone to insane, wasteful green energy projects. I'm the guy that killed the $1 billion boondoggle wind power tax credit that cost taxpayers $1.5 billion for a whopping, 400 jobs. We killed it, fortunately, in 2017, but we must transform the tax code to be competitive in the 21st century.
I remember that the big argument that year was we're paying a windmill more than the base pay for a school teacher.
Oh, yeah.
Just for sitting there. It was just brilliant.
Think of all this money that we could have paid teachers, or we could have put into roads, or we could have hired more cops, and we could have cut taxes.
Yeah. Okay, you talked to Skylar Cooper at KRMG this week. I listened to some of it, and you mentioned, he says, we got to quit punishing productivity. I think there's something to that effect.
Don't tax labor.
Okay.
Don't tax work.
Without naming names, I talked to a couple of my friends who are with Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs. They suggest replacing it with taxes on services. I got pretty worked up over that because when I bill a customer for my work as a contractor, not only am I paying income tax on that hour that I billed, but now a sales tax on top of it. And it's not just me, it's your doctor, your plumber, your lawyer, it's everything else. We're going to raise medical costs just to go see your doctor. These are the concerns I have. So please tell me, are you looking at expanding sales tax in order to cover for this?
Well, before you get too worked up, Dave.
Okay. I'm worked up.
Let's talk economics a little bit. You don't want to you don't want to tax work and the labor that we all put into economy, because anytime you tax something, you sort of limit its effectiveness. Now, what you do want to tax generally is activity. If you tax Dave's work, you're literally taking away from his freedom. But if you tax activity, a la a sales tax, you're now leaving it up to Dave in terms of, well, I get to choose from a freedom perspective when I buy this, or I do this, or I do that. So there's way more freedom on the activity side from an individual choice than it is on the work side. Now, having said that, the first simple thing that needs to happen before we start debating which services might, be taxable and which services might not be taxable, what we need to do is clean up the basic tax code and bring rates down. Senator Dave Rader likes to talk about, if you look at all the tax deductions, tax rebates, tax credits, and you look at everybody's after tax impact from all that stuff, the current tax rate is 4.75% in Oklahoma. But what do you think your average effective tax rate is after you plug in your standard deduction and after you plug in your personal exemption and all that stuff? What do you think the average tax rate is that people actually pay?
Are you talking state or federal?
Just state. State effective tax rate.
I'm just going to give up and you tell me.
3.1%.
Okay.
So would you rather have a standard deduction that saves you some taxes and a personal exemption that saves you some taxes? We just like to wipe all that stuff out because the net result's the same and bring down the tax rate. For example, if you took out the standard deduction and we all just didn't claim that standard deduction,
come up to the microphone, please.
We all claim that standard deduction, but instead of paying 4.75%, I don't know the exact carry crossover number here, but then you'd only have to pay 4.25%. The effect is the same. So it's like we're giving ourselves all these breaks when, well, let's just move these breaks out and reduce the tax rate, because what people out there in the world of comparing different states, they don't think through the deductions and this and, oh, well, in Oklahoma, you pay an effective tax rate of 3.1%. No, you pay 4.75%, and over there in Tennessee, you pay 0. So there's some really easy stuff. We just wipe out $1.6 billion of all these tax credits and tax deductions.
Yeah, but
we can lower the rate to 3.25%.
I understand, but the reality, even if you get rid of state income tax and replace it with a tax on services, it's not 4 point something percent, because every community then is allowed to, and for most people, it's going to be around 9%.
No. And I have done the modeling in terms of if we became like a no income tax state like Tennessee, if one, we just wipe out the silly stuff that forces us to have a larger income tax rate. And then two, we wipe out some sales tax exemptions that they don't do in other states. You guys are sports fans, right? Do you like the Oklahoma City Thunder?
Yeah.
Do you like going to football games? Well, when you go to an NBA game in Tennessee or Texas, you actually pay a sales tax. Now, in Oklahoma, you don't pay a sales tax when you buy tickets to a Thunder game because we exempted it. Because that was sort of, we got to exempt it.
Yeah, I remember. I was so disgusted with the legislature doing that.
And it's...
was to get them here. That was a problem.
I know, and I have a problem with paying for companies and franchises to move here.
So would anybody stop going to the Thunder games if they had to pay a sales tax on the tickets? No.
Right. Yeah, I get
so if
that.
you wipe out all that stuff that we don't need, hold on. Now you get to about 2.5%, and we've got the better tax rate in the region minus Texas, and we're equal to what Arizona has at 2.5. And then maybe you start debating, well, in Florida and Tennessee and Texas, they do tax some services. And what services make sense to tax? And would we rather tax some services instead of taxing our work? And, you know, in some of these states, you guys have pets?
We did.
You do? Okay.
To have a pet tax?
No. In some states, a service is getting your dog groomed.
Right.
So would you rather pay a little tax on getting your dog groomed like they do in other states and not have to pay an income tax?
Right. But what I'm saying here is
people would scream because it's unfair to people.
That would be a difficult debate that the legislature would have to get all the way to a no income tax state like other states. But there's so much that we need to do before that, Dave, that we really don't want to get lost in that conversation.
Right. Yeah. Because honestly, if you think about it, the real issue is not so much how we tax or what percentage we tax at. It's how much we tax and why. Yeah. In other words, can we reduce our state budget?
There you go. Yeah, we can agree there.
That's what I'm talking about. So the real issue is reducing the state budget to the point and bringing in other revenue to where we do not need to tax the individuals.
In the first year of a Mazzei administration, we want to look at reducing spending, and we've got an initial plan that can save recurring expenses $750 million. That allows us to take the rate from 4.75 to 4 or 4.25.
Yeah.
Then if we marry that with some tax reform, like we discussed on these deductions, credits, rebates, exemptions, We could also lower the rate another half a point, another 3/4. So now, Dave, we're getting from 4.75 to 3.5 to 3.75 by reducing spending and doing tax reform. And we haven't even had to talk about services.
All right, one more thing. I'm sorry. Let me one more.
Okay.
Why? Because you know,
cut me up twice.
I'm like
now.
I'm like Al Pacino in Dick Tracy. It'll be there and gone.
I know. What I have to say is from 5 minutes ago.
See, it's almost yeah. You have a better retention. See, I think I've already lost.
I still want my magic wand for item number 3.
Yeah. It's still. We got plenty of time. We saved the time. But honestly, I think it is gone now.
Okay, it'll come back to you because Eddie, I was driving over to your house this week to do some work for you that you needed some help on.
That you're going to give me a bill for this.
Yes, thank you for reminding me. And I'm listening to Skylar on KRMG in his recorded conversation with you, and you talked about we got to quit taxing productivity.
Yeah, we do.
And I'm thinking here, if Eddie hires me as an employee, then I won't have income tax in your magic wand world. But if I'm an independent contractor, now I get slapped with currently Tulsa's 8.51% sales tax on my hour of work. It's the same work.
I don't mean to be too harsh, Dave, but you've gone off the deep end.
Okay.
Because in Texas, in Tennessee, in Florida, where they don't have an income tax state, or they don't have an income tax, and people are flocking to
I got
states.
It. I just wanted you to see it from my
They're not
picture.
charging a service tax for an independent contractor to go do some work.
Okay, see, now that helps me understand the context. Thank you for saying that. You just clarified a lot. Good. Magic wand number 3.
Wait, no.
You remember.
Yeah, it was like a boomerang.
Catch it.
No, it was okay. So we've done the reduction in the state tax. How do we deal with our local community? So, for example, there's no grocery tax statewide, yet the cities haven't given up. They haven't relinquished their. Now, are there cities in Oklahoma that have decided to go along with the state and said, we give up our city tax?
On groceries?
On groceries.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So, and the state has no authority over municipalities, I assume. That's the way the state law.
No, I think we had to carve out that language to allow them to continue.
To get it to pass. Is that what
I think so?
The state grocery legislation specifically addressed the 4.5% state sales tax on groceries, food items. It did not address what the counties and or the cities charge on sales taxes for groceries. That was left to those government.
Okay.
Yeah, because the broader statutory language is if the state charges a sales tax, then the municipalities can. If it's excise tax like gasoline, they can't do a sales tax on gasoline. For instance, that's just your example. But I remember when they were fighting this thing a couple of years ago, they had the municipal league. They're a powerful lobby. You know that. And that was their big thing is there's so many municipal government budgets. They're so dependent on that grocery store.
In Oklahoma, compared to other states where there's some tax receipts from different types of items, in Oklahoma, the cities only have one tax collection stream, and it's from sales taxes.
Right.
They don't have any property tax stuff. They don't have any, fortunately, they don't have any income tax stuff, but sales taxes is all our cities have to operate on. So they did not want to be part of the grocery
property
tax
taxes are
relief.
county, right? That's why
except for that public safety zone that J.D. Nolan got passed a few years ago.
Well, that's only if a local city, Dave, goes to the voters and says, do you want to have
Property
property taxes for public safety dollars.
Yeah.
And I don't know of a municipality that's ever actually implemented that.
So
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah.
Okay, so that's why. See, that explains something then. Why county government tends to have more money. Opening those
More stable budget.
maybe stable, but yeah, than the cities do.
Counties can have both sales tax receipts and property tax receipts.
Right. I've got you. Okay, Dave.
Yeah.
Magic wand number
3.
We have got to make our community safer in Oklahoma. Unfortunately, even here in red state conservative Oklahoma, we fell prey to some of these silly liberal laws where a few years back, we made it a misdemeanor for retail theft. And so as a result, you've got these thugs as a part of various gangs that go into a retail shop where my oldest daughter has often worked, and they walk out with bags of stolen goods.
They're doing it here in Oklahoma?
Oh, they're doing it here in Tulsa. It happens every day.
Quick Trip is told, do not try to stop them.
And our friend Vic, Sheriff Vic Regalado, they actually confiscated a container for an 18-wheeler, and it had $5 million worth of stolen merchandise that had been collected by this, various gang folks, and it was going to be shipped off to, the East Coast where they just sell the stolen goods on the black market.
So how do you fight that?
Well, we have to basically make any type of retail theft above $10 a felony again.
Right.
So, there's a reason, when cops are aware of this, they'll actually arrest the person and know that this person is going to pay some stiff penalties or some jail time. But, if criminals know all I'm going to get is a misdemeanor, if I get, caught and, cops know, well, there's not going to be no repercussions. So why should we put any time attention into that? And there's another problem. Let me come back to one other deal that's really terrible in the rural areas.
It was $500. The language is 780, state question 780, wanted to bump it to 1,000. The legislature beat them to it and raised it to 1,000, kind of like about the last year you were there. And but
2 years
my thinking is similar to you, Mike, except you might make it like second offense bumps to felony or something like that, rather than the $10 as a felony.
Well, I don't think it's fair, Dave. I think the threshold should be super low because the legislature did lower it back to 500 last year or the year before.
Okay, thank you for updating me.
No impact. They're still walking out of these. They go in. If you have 50, thugs across the city in one day, and they all take $100 of stolen merchandise out, then they're pooling it and they're ripping off our small business owners.
But I do want to say,
we've got Trump wouldn't stand for, let's be easy on these folks that are ripping our small business owners off. It's time to get tough again.
That's the thing I want to get at is for a business owner. And I mean, I haven't not heard it disputed. Somebody called in and KMG said, Quick Trip doesn't even prosecute. They don't even do a police report.
Oh, my daughter has seen this at PetSmart and Ross Dress for Less.
But now think like a retailer here. Why do I want all this mess? Nothing's going to. We've got to find a better way for retailers to partner with law enforcement to help take this out.
Agreed.
And I don't know what that is, but I think that's part of the issue.
Well, we obviously need, more deputy sheriffs, more police officers, more troopers. That's a priority from a financial standpoint and how we want to reset the priorities of the state when it comes to the overall state budget. But, cops aren't going to arrest somebody they've only got so much time. They've only got so much manpower. They're not going to spend their time and their booking and driving somebody down for a misdemeanor on retail theft that's hurting our small business owners when, it's never going to lead to any consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And the criminals know this, so they've worked out their schemes to just steal stuff every day.
Yeah, I agree with you. Law
It's
enforcement,
ridiculous.
Public safety, because it's costing all of us.
Now,
That's
the
part of
other,
what's rising prices.
the other terrible thing that's happened in terms of following these, crazy liberal ideas that have swept across the country, thanks to the radical, leftists, is here in Oklahoma, in our rural areas, we've got these Chinese that, are more than likely communists, and they're buying up large tracts of our treasured Oklahoma land for these huge marijuana, grow operations. And the friends, the clients, the Republicans, the Democrats that, own land in our rural areas keep telling us, as I crisscross the state, that there is criminal activity that's happening alongside these marijuana grow farms. And in spite of this fancy legislation that was passed last year at the Capitol, and all the politicians, or some of the politicians, would sort of wave the victory salute. Hey, we passed this law that says foreign, bad actors can't buy land in Oklahoma. Well, the special interest crowd made the loophole so broad that nothing has happened. And I literally was helped by an anonymous clerk in one of our Oklahoma counties that showed me the affidavit that goes along with the buying process of farmland. And there's these boxes, and you can check one box that says I'm a legal resident. So the affidavit gets compiled with the transfer of the deed. But there's this other box, Eddie, that says, well, I intend to become a legal resident.
God. Oh.
And so we've got to chase out these, Chinese that have bought up Oklahoma land, and we've got to make it untenable for foreign bad actors to buy land in Oklahoma. And that's what is necessary to make our community safer.
I have to tell you, I worked with Chip Paul, the author of 788, on behalf of veterans with mental health crises and the promise of what cannabis medicines can do. I got very involved in it. I was severely disappointed with the OMMA and, in general, the legislature dragging their feet on enforcement. The laws were there. The problem is there because of a failure to enforce.
Yeah.
And it was making tons of money for the state, but we weren't spending the money on enforcement. And I think we're 6 years behind right now.
Yeah, they've, our friend Adria Berry at the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Association,
OMMA.
They've done lots of yeoman's work to clean things up in terms of the registration requirements, and some oversight and some accountability. And they've increased the costs a little bit in terms of the licensing, but the regulatory approach, the legislative approach has not done enough.
Right.
Because we've got 300,000 folks apparently in this state that have medical marijuana licenses, and we're producing tons and tons more of marijuana that is necessary for our Oklahoma people. And that's why the Chinese own this land, and they're shipping it out all across the country.
Right.
And we've
it
got
is cover for criminal activity.
And, my concern is we're not doing enough, because we like the $60 million or so that's, coming in from tax receipts for the state. And, the cities like the $50 or $60 million that's coming in for, sales tax collections at these cannabis shops. But that's not worth the poison that we're creating for our kids. And it's certainly not worth giving away our Oklahoma farmland to Chinese communists.
Yeah, it's a real issue. Real issue. That's 3 magic wand swings.
Is that 3 or 4?
Those are some very, very important priorities for a future Mazzei administration.
And so other than that, the campaign, how's it been going? Other than, I know you had your launch. How's your team looking?
Oh, we're very excited about our team of managers, deputies, team leaders for various groups like teachers and military members and veterans. Our staff is just top notch. Some of the best, strategists and analysts in the Midwest, in the country. I couldn't be more enthused about this wonderful organization that's coming together, Eddie. As you know, my father, former colonel, in the military, likes to be heavily involved, and he doesn't really care if I get tired. So he keeps pushing and pushing and pushing. And have you thought about this? And then you're doing this.
He calls me all the time.
Yeah, we are going to have the biggest statewide grassroots organization Oklahomans have seen since the days of Jim Inhofe. Wow. And we want to carry out this message that Oklahoma's destiny is to be a land of growth and prosperity, where Judeo-Christian values are treasured and families can feel super confident about raising their kids and getting a life that is filled with goodness and fellowship with other Oklahomans.
How many candidates have officially declared right now?
Official registered candidates with the Oklahoma Ethics Commission, I believe right now the number is 4. Myself included in that 4.
Do you know who they are, or can you mention who they are?
Tell us, give free advertising to your opponents.
I just
Gentner and Charles.
We know about Gentner, Drummond.
Term limited state representative Charles McCall.
Yeah.
We and then there's a lady. I apologize, I can't remember her name. But, we like to emphasize that at the moment, I am the only lifelong, true reform-minded, conservative Republican. And you can check out.
Absolutely.
You can check out the political registration history and the donation history of some of those other folks in the race.
That's a good point.
Yeah, one of those.
I'll let you guys work on that.
I don't know much about Charles McCall, but someone else that's been mentioned has, to me, some questions.
Well, I'll just tell people, get ready. A couple of those guys, Mike, I know you don't live a flamboyant, multi-million-dollar yacht lifestyle, private jet like some of the other guys.
I had to get 5 kids through college.
Right. But yeah, that's the thing. I think there's a couple of them that are going to throw millions of their own money into this race. Yeah. And I'm getting a big bowl of popcorn this time. And I know some of their handlers, or at least people have run their past campaigns, and it's not going to be all roses, hot dogs, and apple pie. Mm-mm. They have a tendency to really throw it around. So now, Mike, you remember, I don't know if I think you were in town when Turnbull and Chuck Richardson were running for AG. Mm-hmm. They beat themselves up so bad that Tim Harris won.
I remember that.
Yeah. So those dynamics can come to play. They can beat each other up so bad, they'll move you up in the polls. Well, unless you start beating people up, I don't know.
I'm a small business owner for 28, 29 years. We like to focus on how to have collaborative consensus, brainstorming, get people excited about the vision, be purposeful and diligent, Dave, about these are the strategies that work. Mm-hmm. And it means we have to challenge the status quo and the establishment. And if we work on these fixes, I like to remind folks very specifically that true reform-minded conservatives fix things. Yeah. When I was in the state Senate, we had this massive transformational effort on pensions and workers' compensation and lawsuit reform and state roads and bridges. And we just did one major transformation after another. And when true reform-minded conservatives get together to fix things, we can make Oklahoma a world-class destination state.
Okay. Can I clean up one thing? And this, because I'm in agreement with you on the income tax thing. You remember when the Oklahoma City Thunder were in the finals NBA championship? They ran into the Miami Heat and won Mr. LeBron James.
Yeah, Durant and Westbrook and James.
Great all-star team.
Fun year.
But here's the thing. Years earlier, LeBron started out in Cleveland. I think he grew up in that area. And he was free agent. I think it was New York Knicks wanted him and Miami Heat. And Rush Limbaugh said he will end up at Miami.
No income tax state.
There you go. That's exactly what Rush Limbaugh said. When you're looking at, however many tens of millions of dollars, all of a sudden, Florida had an advantage over New York where you're paying city taxes on top of all that.
Why do you think Tom Brady went to the Buccaneers for a couple of years?
Exactly. So, folks, if you're an Oklahoma City Thunder fan, you might like his tax code because you might end up having a championship out of it.
Let's keep those young stars here for the next 10 years.
Yeah. I'll send you my bill, Mike.
And draw some more.
Yeah.
That's good.
All right.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you feel we haven't covered or that you'd like to say? Actually, what we usually do, when we have candidates, we like them to speak right into the camera and just make your closing argument of why you should be the guy.
Thanks so much for having me, gentlemen. We would just love and appreciate you. Check out Mike Mazzei at mike4ok.com. That'll tell you more about us, give you a little bit of my history. But most importantly, we love Oklahoma. We believe that it's a very, very special place. Oklahoma's 30 plus years ago, Oklahoma, as much as it's a state in America, and if true conservatives or when true conservatives, get together, we can all, I think, agree that there's no place like Oklahoma. I've been all over the country, all over the world, and there's just no place like Oklahoma, none. But together, true reform-minded conservatives can choose freedom and faith, and together we can make a better tomorrow for our kids and our grandkids. And so we'd love to have your help and support. We'd really appreciate your vote when the time comes. And check us out and join our team, and we'll find a way to spend some time with you.
And where can they find you on the internet?
Internet is mike4ok.com.
And social media as well. I'm sure they'll find
There's a Mike Mazzei for Governor Facebook page now.
And you want to spell Mazzei, by the way? That might help people.
Well, that's why the website is just Mike
for OK.
Mike4ok.com. Yeah. But my last name is Mazzei. M, A is in Alpha, Z is in Zebra, another Z, E is in Echo, and I is in Ice. So
lately, you've been very accessible at last few years at state Republican conventions. We have a state convention coming up.
I'll be there.
You got a table there?
2nd, got a table.
Because,
got a booth.
Folks, this guy wants to build a grassroots team. And there's going to be a couple thousand people, perhaps. Yeah. And I think it'd be a great opportunity for you to start recruiting in all the counties.
I'll be there and shake as many hands as I can. I went to the Tulsa County Republican Convention.
Yes.
And shook a couple hundred hands. And I went to the Oklahoma County Republican Convention and shook a couple hundred hands. We've got a phone effort that's starting to try to talk to all the GOP faithful over the next several months. So you might even get a phone call from me.
I have.
Yeah. And if you want to, one thing you can do too, if you know people on the other side of the state, top of the state, bottom of the state, all over the state, feel free to share this.
Yeah, we'll be getting to all 77 counties. We've already been to 15 or 20.
Yeah. So just feel free to share this over the internet, email, however you want to do it, and invite people to see it and look Mike up. And we thank you all for
Thanks
it,
so
Mike.
much for having me.
Oh, yeah.
Fun.
We thank you for taking the time for us, and we'll take a break right here, right now.
All right.
I'm Jeff Davis with Just a Thought. From the world hindquarters of dubious information, it's Fake News Friday. Is there a vast city under the Great Pyramid? Experts say it's fake news. Fear in Europe that the EU could steal people's savings accounts. They can't. A viral video shows a roof collapse at a bakery in Nigeria while crowds grab free bread. It was actually a video from India in 2024. Fake audio of J.D. Vance criticizing Elon Musk was spread around the internet. You can't believe your own ears anymore. A photo of hundreds of bears blocking the entrance of Yellowstone is fake. There have been food there that have been different. A story about Elon Musk paying the medical bills and installing Neuralink in a 7-year-old is satire, also known as fake, by the way. Speaking of satire, a fake claim on the internet, Michelle Obama gets $122,000 from the government for national morale maintenance. Not true. Televangelist Kenneth Copeland had fake videos of him showing up online. Proof that people have too much time on their hands. April 15th is 11 days away. How much fake news will be handed to the IRS? Just a thought. I'm Jeff Davis.
Can you hear me, Dave? Can you hear me? Hey, I thought we'd just gently dribble in. Hey, I have to say this, and thank you. I don't want to hear you. No, I like this peace and solitude, man. My mind is racing. I've got so many things shooting through my mind. I can't even believe it. But, this weather coming in.
By the way, on that, I have a compliment for you. I learn more from people I disagree with than people I agree with.
Okay.
Think about that.
So that means you learned something from me?
And you might too.
Because we... Ooh, okay, thank you. Oh, my. Well, first of all, we thank the former state senator, Mike. That's his dad, Mike Mazzei.
Yeah.
Mike Mazzei for spending that hour with us.
He impressed me.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, there's a lot there. He is a financial whiz. He's so smart, and not just smart, but in mental acumen, but just common sense. And he was truly a jewel in the crown of our state legislature. He was behind a lot of our fiscal success in the last probably 15, 20 years. Because the guy, he just knows his finances, and he owns his, like I said, his financial planning firm, an investment firm. And he didn't say this, but the returns, he was talking about his investments for his clients have averaged over 20% a year for the last few years. Yeah, that's pretty good.
And you know, in today's stock market,
that's really
okay. Pay attention to that.
Yeah. So kudos again to Mike Mazzei for being with us, and I don't feel any shame or anything in saying or fear in saying that I hope he is our next governor, because I think he will do an incredible job. So
yeah,
if you would like, feel free to share this first segment with people throughout the state that you know, throughout the city, throughout the county, throughout whatever. But I think we really need to, if you want a true conservative, godly governor, this is the guy.
Yeah, I'm not endorsing yet. Charles McCall, the seat's ready for you. Gettner Drummond, seat's ready for you. Gettner's, against his own handlers. At one point, he just said, no, call David Van. I want to meet with Tara. That's when I was president there. And Gentner's a very stand-up guy and very sharp. Charles, I don't think Charles McCall wants to get in a debate with Mike Mazzei at this point. Charles, prove me wrong, okay? You're a fine gentleman, but I like to see you more accessible.
You know, it's funny because I tend to jump out early. You remember I was the early Trump guy. That's how we met. In fact.
I thought you were Ben Carson guy.
Well, right from the get-go. Yeah. But real early on, probably I think it was after the first primary. Yeah, it was. It was after the first primary. I saw the future.
It was after Iowa. Because then you debated me in that famous knockdown drag out. And then a couple days later, you said something to Pat Campbell on there. He says, okay, are you official now? Are you coming out of the closet? And you did, yes. Yeah. So, yeah, I think before New Hampshire, you were.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Ready.
I usually do that. Win, lose, or draw. You know, I do like to come out early. And because I try to get a sense. I'm not always right. No, you know, it doesn't mean my guy is going to win, but almost always my guy should have won. Even when my guy is not a guy. Sometimes it's a woman that I'm supporting instead of a man. But no, but in the case of Mike Mazzei, I really don't think Oklahoma could do better than to have him as governor.
I need to get that sound clip and we make it one of the buttons on your board. I'm not always right. And we just keep hitting it. I'll just keep hitting it. But anyway, yeah, no, I think Mike, I think the state would be in good hands. I don't think he's the pizzazz great, you know.
Oh no, he's
charisma guy.
Not the great orator and right.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's just like Trump. Trump is the opposite. He's not only not the great orator, he's the great turn offer or whatever you want to call it. He'll tick off people when he speaks more than he'll get people on his side. I mean, you know, it's something that I mean, even I sit there and cringe at the things he says.
I know. Trump's the one that says, I haven't criticized your looks. However, there's a lot there that I could go with.
Well, you know, it's funny. I don't know if we've discussed this, and we will get to some really serious good news.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's good or not, but serious, interesting news I hear. But I may have mentioned this before, but the thing that got me on the Trump train was when he criticized Carly Fiorina. Now, it wasn't because he criticized Carly that I jumped on his side, but the fact that he didn't try to lie about it. Mm-hmm. He and there was a reporter for the Rolling Stone magazine that was interviewing him, and there was something on the television featuring Carly Fiorina.
Oh, with their camper van?
Well, I don't know what it was, but
she had a Winnebago that she drove.
All right. Well, the reporter for Rolling Stone was there, and Trump sees Carly and says, "Look at that face. Could you vote for that?" Uh-huh. You know.
And Rolling Stone ran with it.
In Rolling Stone. And then they went to him afterwards, to Trump. Did you really say that? And I said, oh, he's not going to admit that. There's no way you would. That's suicide. Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, I said it. Mm-hmm. That was the moment right there. I don't know. This is no joke. You can ask my wife. That was the moment. I told her, my wife, you know what? That's the guy right there. He was like number 5. He wasn't even like number 2 or 3 on my list. You know, I had Ben Carson, Ted Cruz, Marco, Liver. I mean, like I said, I think I even had Jeb Bush above Donald Trump at the time. But he leapt right into first place, because if you can get somebody to admit something that bad, I mean, to me, that is not etiquette or political etiquette for sure, then you know, you can trust that person to tell you the truth about almost anything.
Yeah.
And that's what did it. And then the
Yeah.
second thing was much later in South Carolina, a conservative state went solidly for George W. Bush earlier. And he just slammed George W. Bush in South Carolina. And I remember telling my wife there, are you kidding me? He's doing this in South Carolina. I think he's toast. And what does he do? He wins it by a landslide. The primary. It was during the primary. And
when you say slam, I think it had to do with the Iraq War, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. He
That's a big military-based state.
Oh yeah. And patriots and, and the whole thing. And George W. Bush, he's like a demigod almost or something. And, but nope, so I think a lot of people may have felt the same thing, that here's a guy that is not afraid to say what he really believes.
Well, he wasn't a weasel about it. Right. So many politicians will try to,
Oh, I didn't mean that. Yeah, I was misquoted. Yeah. I misspoke.
Yeah. And so that is refreshing.
It is.
I like you. My first guy was actually Rand Paul.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So I thought Ted Cruz was always your guy. Oh,
no.
Okay.
And in fact, Nathan Dahm and I talked a couple of times because we were both Rand Paul. And it was like December, I said, Nathan, Rand is just not getting anywhere. I'm going over to the Cruz people. And Nathan says, if it's not Rand Paul, I'm just going to sit this out. And he did. And, but no, I knew some of, Santorum's coordinator, campaign manager, Michael Biondo, went over to work for Rand Paul. But Rand just, and then, when he became, remember, Rand barely made it on the big table.
Right. Well, he was on the end.
Way at the end.
They had him all the way.
And Trump standing right there in the middle next to Jeb said, Rand, you shouldn't even be here. God. He's like, I haven't criticized you. I haven't criticized. No, there are a lot I couldn't criticize.
Yeah, like I said, it's just like the guy just doesn't quit.
He was a bull in a china closet. Nobody had seen this in Republican politics.
No, he was. He definitely was. So anyway, but that's rehashing a lot of our past. But man, I'll tell you. But it's refreshing to get honest politicians, and we've seen the man we can trust, and we've seen his predecessor and the one who succeeded him that we totally could not trust. There was, you could not trust Barack or Joe. As far as you could throw both of them together, but what I'm seeing now though, Dave, I hate to say it, but all of the never Trumpers are starting to raise their ugly heads again. I don't know if you've noticed, but I don't know. Do you listen to Eric Erickson at all?
I have it recently.
Okay, my wife started listening to him. He ended up taking. What's his name? The guy who replaced Rush Limbaugh, Marquet, yeah. So Eric took his place, and this week again he starts bashing Trump again, and of course what he's bashing him about now. It's funny. This is what bothers me. It's like these never Trumpers. When things are going well, they seem to come back on board. They'll support him and say good things about him, never glowing things, but they'll say generally good things. But anytime there's a little chink in the armor or things look a little bit bad, they're ready to pounce, and you can see the true depth of their dislike for the man come out. Well, Eric Erickson has joined the chorus of people that is ready to jump on Donald Trump about the tariffs, and just bashed him this week.
I don't read it that way.
Eric Erickson?
Right. I was listening to him on the way over to your house this last week.
Yeah, but what day was that?
trying to remember.
Yeah, by the end of the week, yeah. But yeah, I mean, see, it's one thing you have a day of downturn, but a whole week when you're the average average of 1,200 points a day.
Here's where I put Eric Erickson is very similar to Ben Shapiro.
Right.
I consider both of them relatively objective. Because I heard early on, like on the whole deportation thing, Eric Erickson said, okay, here's where Trump's team screwed up. Because there were a few people that got deported that they realized they screwed up. They got the wrong person. They didn't do their due diligence, their due process of law to verify the identity of the person. And he's the only one I heard.
I think there's one person that happened to. There's another guy.
I heard of 3.
Well, I heard the other guy, and then Fox or Newsmax took the time to actually look into this guy, and he turned out to be an MS-13. He was a bad guy.
Yeah. You have to make sure, regardless of whether or not they have a right to speedy, fair trial, I'm setting that aside. There still is a proper process to make sure before, it's like you hear the horror story. Somebody went in to get a leg amputated. They amputated the good leg and left him with the bad one. It's incompetence not to do your due diligence. And we have to at least acknowledge sometimes we screw up by taking shortcuts.
No. Yeah, but Dave.
And that wasn't Trump either. That was somebody under him.
It was ICE, yeah, but think about this. How many times do you think in the past 4 years prior, Biden screwed up?
Oh, yes.
Did anybody ever say anything?
No, I agree.
Did anybody say anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not, that's what I'm saying. Somebody's good. Let it play out.
Yeah.
Let the left-wing media hash it out, throw all the stuff. You never, ever heard MSNBC, CNN, NBC, ABC say Joe Biden, when they, on something that was really, really bad. They may every now and then say, they made it.
No, the best way it was said succinctly, Elon Musk standing right next to Trump in the Oval Office with his little boy on his shoulder. He says, we're going to make mistakes, but we will own them quickly.
Right.
Right. And so I love that because it's like, we're not God. We're not always right. We're not so insecure that we're afraid to admit when we're wrong.
Yeah. But I don't even know, because on the one case, like I said, they weren't even wrong. And I'm still not sure if they were wrong on the other ones either. Just because the mainstream media says he was wrong, does not necessarily mean he was wrong.
Great point. Don't trust legacy media for facts. And
that's one of the things you get people like Eric Erickson, all these people. It's like they're waiting for something to be out there. He's blown it. He's blown it here. He's blown it there. And I'm sorry, that's me.
Okay.
And they're ready to pounce on it. And we've got to stop that.
Yeah.
That has got to stop. We cannot eat ourselves. Let me mute there we go. We have got to stop eating our own.
Yeah.
And this is what just really ticks me off. So anyway, the big news of the week, obviously, is the tariffs. Okay. We talked about it a little bit with Mike Mazzei earlier. And it was so refreshing to me to hear him say that he believes that President Trump and the administration are doing the right thing. And if you watch Newsmax in particular, and if you'll watch Maria Bartiromo, if you watch the right programs on Fox even, you will see the people that agree with the president on what we're doing. That's another thing, Eric Erickson. That's the real thing. It's like Eric Erickson is some financial wizard. Like he knows everything about how it's supposed to be. And they keep talking about the past, they're talking about Keynesian theory, and they're talking about this, and all these economists and et cetera, and say this and this. But here's the theory, that tariffs do not really help. It just slows down economies. Tariffs actually work against you. But there's a problem in this tariffs versus what Hoover may have done or others may have done in the past. We're doing it just to balance things out. We're not trying to do it to get ahead. We're not trying to do it to one up anybody. We're just trying to make things fair. It's like Trump wanting to boycott NATO. Remember he was upset with NATO because Germany was paying like $1 per, and we're paying 15 or whatever. It just, we were basically carrying, and it's like when on the imbalance, like India, a 63% tariff, 63% for everything we're shipping to India. If we want to send cars to India, if we want to send clothing, anything we want to send to India, you've got to add 6. So for everything that's $1, you've got to add 63 cents to, if you want to sell it there. So something that's $1 becomes $1.63. $100 is $163. If they send stuff to us, no tariff.
So here's I'm sorry.
Europe, what are we at, 25, 30% on, especially on cars. If we send, that's why you see no American car. If you go to Germany, you will not see a Cadillac. You will not see a Lincoln. You will not see, you name it, there. Now you'll see a lot of Japanese and Korean cars there. They've got a special deal with them, but they look at us and say, "Oh, the stupid Americans," or what, And so this is what Trump was trying to do. He's basically saying, this isn't right. We're not going to treat us like that.
Refresh me. Your friend from St. Louis that we had in about a year ago, black man.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Kareem.
The guy's so sharp on economics.
Yeah, we should call him. I should get him.
I'd love to have him back in on this, because remember, he said, I don't like the term capitalism. First of all, it was a term put upon us by the Marxists. He said, I'm a free enterprise. He said, he says, what we had centuries past was mercantilism, where the government controlled commerce for the government's strategic benefit. They refused to let you ship overseas. They refused to let certain things in. And it was a heavy-handed government, and tariffs was a big part of it. And that's why I love to pick his brain on this. But here's the thing. I'm going to say something here, and I got to explain it after I perform CPR on Eddie's heart attack here. I don't think the tariffs work. The only time they work is if I can impose a tariff on the other country's goods, but they're not going to impose a tariff on mine.
Exactly.
Which is exactly what's happening.
Right.
They're at war with us, economic war, but we're not at war with them. Therefore, it's working for them.
Right.
Because we are rolling over and say, hit me again, kick me again. And the only way I support what Trump's doing, and I think it's not even an option, I think it's a must do, is you must reciprocate.
Right.
Whatever they're doing to you, those are the terms that they face.
And we're still not even doing what they're doing to us. For example, 65%, and he's throwing a 35%. Right.
But what I think is going to happen here is it's going to suppress economies. It's going to suppress GNPs of all countries.
Right.
And then you can sit down with all of them and says, how about we all take them off and everybody lives a much better life?
Right.
Because the tariff is a suppression. Therefore, let's get rid of all of it. But whatever we do, we're going to respect each other. It says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Right. Now, here's here's what I think is going on, though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The European leaders in particular,
Mm-hmm.
they hate Donald Trump. I think everybody understands that.
Mm-hmm.
Germany, France, and England mainly.
The globalists do.
The globalists.
Yeah.
They hate him with the I mean, I cannot express to you strongly enough how much they hate the man.
Yeah.
Okay. Because he makes them feel inferior because he's calling them on their game. Okay. He's exposing what they're really about, and they don't like that. Okay. Germany, it's a little deeper than that. They still think they're supposed to be the world dominating power. They really do believe that, having lived there. Germans,
yeah.
They really.
But the French are just as bad,
Well,
and the
well,
English.
well,
They
yeah.
all are arrogant.
Well, no, well, yeah, but it's a little different. The French are just that way, but
They can't do better. They don't know better.
we don't call them frogs for nothing. No. But anyway, no. But so what I see happening, the globalists, there's a conspiracy here now, and they're digging in and trying to get everybody else to join them, and then they're working the media, are the Democrats in America, and of course the mainstream media, to make it look worse than it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's going on. So what's got to happen here is for us to stand strong. The president needs the American people to stick with him, to ride it out, and short-term pain for long-term gain.
Yeah,
that's really the story. And and right here is an article on Fox said Trump urges Americans to hang tough on tariffs as the markets tumble.
Yeah.
Now the markets dropped, I think, 2,000 or 3,000.
About 23 yesterday alone.
Yeah, just yesterday alone. So yeah, we might be up to 5,000 points. I mean, it's brutal. Let's just say it's brutal.
We're back where we were a year ago.
Yeah. So, well, actually, no, we've only halfway. This is the beautiful thing that people don't understand. We've grown so much that even with all of the fall, we're only halfway back to where we were a year ago.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. The reason I know is because they talked about it last night on. I cheated. No, okay. But anyway, but this is But see, what you're saying, Dave, is what most people think. Yeah, because that's how it feels. No, but I'm saying, but that's how it feels. People, you feel because the losses, daily losses, have been so extreme. It feels like we have to be back to where we were a year ago, or even worse. These are not even the worst losses that the Dow has ever experienced, which is crazy. So it's painful. It's brutal. It's not easy. It's hard. It's tough, but we have to stick with it because, as we talked about earlier, the just greed of those investors, the people who trade, is going to at some point say, well, wait a minute, now I'm starting to lose money. I've got to start making money again, and I'm not making money as the market is going down. So what we've got to do now, we got to start pumping it back up, get it to go up. So I would advise you, if you have a broker, an investment counselor, investment advisor, or a broker, someone you can invest through, like Mike Mazzei, give them. That's a
Eddie, I got to say, I was right here. On May 2nd of actually April 26th of last year, we were at 38,239. Now we're at 38,240. To a point, we're where we were last year, April 26th. Dow Jones.
All right,
Industrial.
I'll check it. Yeah. Okay.
Or wait a minute. No. This is Dow Jones Industrials.
Okay, check the NASDAQ.
Okay, yeah, that would be another story.
Yeah,
but I don't
NASDAQ and
have that
S&P.
here.
Yeah, so I was okay. Anyway, yeah. See, Dave and I have this thing. We have to prove each other right or wrong. That's so.
I'm doing it for you.
Yeah, right.
The listener.
Yeah. As if you can't do it for yourself. Anyway, what I was getting at, get somebody like Mike, or if you feel you want to do it yourself, and for start small, go to Schwab, where you can buy what they call slices.
Yeah,
$5 for a slice of any stock.
Yeah.
The hot one, Nvidia is one. If you want Apple, if you want Williams Company's been on a tear. Williams was on a tear up until this week. But anyway, you can buy shares for $5 shares, and eventually they build up. If you $5, $10, $20, if you got $20 a month, $50 a month. Williams is at 50 something. You can almost buy a share a month, and then dividends, you'll get dividends and capital gains, all that, and you slowly will build up. Anyway, I don't want to get off on all that, but now is the time to do it as far as investing, and things will turn around. Yeah. And if you dollar cost average, in other words, as it's going down, you buy, because as it goes down, you can buy more for the same amount. And when it comes back up, you've made money. So
do you remember in 87, the big stock crash?
Mm-hmm.
Because we hadn't seen anything like that since October 29. Right. And they're interviewing a guy on the floor, and he's just kind of in a daze. They ask him, and he kind of looks at me, he says, there's some incredible deals if somebody wants to put money in right now. Stephen Moore said that yesterday, and Stephen, who is an economist and I think still is an advisor to Trump. When I had dinner with them back in 2016, he was on the Trump finance team for his campaign. And that's the thing. He says, you're looking for a time where you're probably going to get a good deal. Now, listen, they're not all the same. Some are still performing quite well. Some are performing horribly. And I would stay away from.
Yeah.
So, what's his name? Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett. He says, I never invest in a business I don't understand. He was talking to Ted Koppel sitting in a Dairy Queen. He says, Berkshire owns a significant amount of Dairy Queen because I understand this business. He bought Burlington Northern Railroad because he said, I understand the basics of this. Be careful not. Your brother-in-law may have a great deal in on some penny stocks. If you don't understand the basics of business, stay out of it.
Right.
So it is a good time for somebody to wisely invest at least something.
Yeah, slowly.
And diversify.
And methodically. And like I said, there's a thing called dollar cost averaging, where you put the same amount once a month. And that way, when the stock goes down, you buy more of it. When it goes up, you buy less of it. But when it goes up, what you bought, because you bought more, it's worth that much more when it breaks even. So it's this thing.
Hey, on this, Eddie, you know a few things about this. So when a person puts money in the bank, whether it's a CD or market or whatever, the bank reports to the government every year how much interest income you made, and you have to pay taxes on it.
Right.
You buy stock. If you don't sell, you just hang on to it.
Right.
It goes up, maybe doubles or triples. You're not paying any taxes until you sell.
Well, yeah.
Except on the dividends.
Or capital gains, right.
The capital gains.
Capital gains, which is actual cash payment every quarter, monthly on some dividends.
The dividends you'll pay taxes on. But the rise in value of the stock is separate from dividends.
That's separate, right. The rise you don't until you sell.
You've got two ways of making money in stocks. One is the share of the profits each quarter, and then the value of the stock, your percentage of ownership may go up or down.
Right.
But on that second part, the value of the stock, until you sell, you don't realize a gain. Therefore, there is no taxes on that gain.
Right. And the way to, even avoid that is to put it into a Roth IRA. And then you can invest $7,000 a year, or initially sometime, then $6,000 a year after that.
Well, Roth is a separate vehicle. You could do this whether you do Roth or not.
Okay, thank you. So if you do a Roth, you will not ever pay anything on your gain when you sell it. That's the thing, because the money you're putting into a Roth is already taxed.
Gotcha. Yes.
So that's hey, I want to move on here. President Trump is doubling down on his controversial tariffs program. And he's asking us, this is more what I was just saying, to hang tough. Trump, in a post on Truth Social Saturday morning, which is today, Saturday morning, this is pretty fresh, wrote that his plan is already working with trillions of dollars being poured into the U.S. economy. See, this is what the mainstream media is not telling us. Okay, it sounds really bad, these tariffs and the stock market's going down, but what's happening because of the tariffs, the stuff that Japan, Canada, Mexico, Germany, France, Italy, everybody is sending to us with the tariffs, we are actually making money as a country. That doesn't mean individual private companies are, and this is why a lot of companies don't like it, because it may be hurting their sales overseas. But the other side of that is the when you start making it harder to sell stuff overseas, you start working harder to sell it in your own country. And these guys are going to have to start thinking about, what do we do to get our customer base up here, our domestic customer base, and incomes will start rising here as well to be able to allow people to afford to purchase things more. So there are a lot of pieces involved here, and I think everybody just needs to sit back and calm down. He says, we're bringing back jobs and businesses like never before. Already more than $5 trillion of investment and rising. This is an economic revolution, and we will win. And we know that several of these foreign companies are pouring millions and millions of dollars now into building factories and building things. And what is the Taiwan Semiconductor, one of the most popular semiconductor factories. They were made in Japan. I mean, China. What is it?
Taiwan.
Yeah. The other China.
Free China.
Yeah. Anyway, they now have partnered with Intel. So they're going to start making their semiconductors, and they've taken out a 35% ownership in Intel. Yeah. See, so you're going to start seeing different new partnerships and different things take place. That's key. It doesn't matter who owns it. Right. It's where the factory is. Right. So key. And I want to say, one of my favorite Netflix series is called The Ranch. It was Ashton Kutcher and his buddy from the 70s show, Masterson, plays his older brother, Rooster. Rooster goes to work for some big corporate. But it was serious, wasn't it? The Ranch? Yeah. It's a serious. Yeah, it's great. And the funny thing, it's rural southwestern Colorado, where you picked which gang you were in. You were either a Ford or a Chevy guy. Everybody drove pickups, and it was either a Ford pickup, and you always bashed the other one. Rooster comes home from his first day working this corporate gig or managing a ranch, and he's driving a Toyota Tundra. And his dad looks at him and says, what the heck, kind of import thing. He says, no, Dad, it's made in Texas. Yeah. And it just messed up his dad's whole worldview. It's an Asian vehicle, and you're telling me it's made in Texas? Yeah, I remember driving through Georgia on the way to Florida one time from Atlanta. Yeah. And actually, we had to go through Alabama. I'm sorry. There's a part where you had to go to get to the Panhandle there. Yeah. And we're driving down, look across, and there's this giant factory over there in big letters, Hyundai.
Yeah.
In the middle of Alabama.
Or like Trump says, Hyundai.
Hyundai,
That's what he called you say. Yeah. And so I like what Mike Mazzei said earlier in our first segment. He says, collectively, there's a 15% tariff charged to U.S. goods when you even it all out in dollar volume. What Trump announced this week was whatever the tariff that country was doing on us, we're going to just charge them half.
Right. See, that's it. We're not even
now,
right.
Get this, because if we went up to what they're charging, dollar for dollar, which we have a moral right to do, some would say an obligation to our own workers to do, then they'll just raise it again. If they raise it now, and we're only charging half, now you know who the lunatics are who are for all-out war. Those are not our friends at all. Right. They have been extorting. So it's just going to be really interesting. I think China has already expanded tariffs on U.S. goods as a result of it. That's the only one I know of. But how does, say, the British Parliament justify they're charging us 20, we're only charging them 10, and they think they got to raise it more on us? No. Be thankful we're only taking back half.
Right. Yeah. And basically what's going to happen if they keep raising it, as they raise it, they're going to end up pricing themselves out.
Yeah. Now, if you call tariff a tax on the consumer, let's just go with that for the sake of this argument. What you're willing to do is let a foreign country, or actually basically say, by buying something, my sales tax just went up. My government is taxing me for buying a foreign good above and beyond what they tax me for a domestic good, a sales tax. And that now you find out who the big government people who treat their own people like subjects and slaves.
Well, I don't know if I ever told you this story. I think I may have told everyone this story before. When we lived in Germany, there was a Mercedes dealership on the Atlantic coast. I think they're North Carolina. And what they used to do, they would send us a check for $1,000. And this was, we're talking in the 80s now. $1,000 in the 80s was a lot more than $1,000 today. And I would get a check and my wife would get a check for $1,000. Then we would get these papers, a letter authorizing us to go to Mercedes and pick up a brand new Mercedes in our name. And then we take this, we go through, it's amazing to go to the Mercedes factory outside of, it's a place called Sindelfingen, which is outside of Stuttgart, Germany. So we would go there, they have this, and then they give you 100 Deutschmark at the time, which is, let's say $100 coupon to eat in the Mercedes Michelin 3-star restaurant there, and then they call your name and you go in and they do they take you through the car and they explain everything about the car. And,
field trip.
Well, yeah.
Guided tour, yeah.
Yeah, of the car. But you're in like a garage, a giant immaculate garage, but you're in there with like 50 people. I mean, they got Mercedes and everybody's waiting to get their Mercedes. It's like waiting at doctors on this. Herr van Riesingham, Herr Huff, and then Frau Huff, So they call me and my wife, and so we both walk out, and then they take me to my car and her to her car, and they show us this beautiful new Mercedes, et cetera, et cetera. And then once they're through the tour, they give us the keys. We get in the car. We drive it out. We drive it 1 block out of the thing in 1 block to an exporter. And they drive it to the coast and then ship it to America, right? And the funny part, I always have to tell this. So here we are, we drive it to one block, we turn the car and then we have to walk back up the thing and we passing these people, who saw us in the room the whole time we're waiting for the car. They're coming out with their new cars and here's us walking.
It broke down already.
Yeah, we're walking up the street back to get our car and go back. But, we were $1,000 or $2,000 richer because we did this. So they paid $1,000 per car to get us to pick it up, but they saved like $10,000 on import because it was a used vehicle.
Yes.
It wasn't a new. And
you were importing it.
Right.
You were taking it back to the States.
We shipped it back. And so they were able to sell buy them for like $10,000 less than they would have if they had just gotten it straight from the factory, shipped to America without a previous.
Yeah, that was what Mike was talking about, the whole concept of loopholes a mile wide. You can drive a truck through it. Yeah. So they had all these deals and they learned how to game the system, which the average person, it wouldn't be worth their time. But on a scale like a big global manufacturer, it's worth it for their lawyers to pick apart the system and find a loophole.
Can you imagine 10,000 times 10,000?
Yeah.
I'm sure Mercedes Mercedes has factories here.
Yeah.
And BMW has factories here and everybody, Toyota, Hyundai, whoever.
Yeah.
They've got these factories here. So they're not in bad shape, Yeah. It's the smaller people, the big ones that are probably, where you have problems is things like the French with champagne. Because the French, I didn't know this for like 50 years, maybe 60 or I don't know, but that sparkling wine.
Yeah, it's a trademark, right?
Yeah, and champagne are the same thing.
Yeah,
and champagne is because it comes from a place called Champagne, an area.
Yes.
And so you're only allowed to, like you said, trademark.
It's a and they protect it.
They protect it.
Yeah.
So it's like bourbon. If it doesn't come from Kentucky, you can't call it bourbon. It's called whiskey. It's the same stuff.
Right. And it costs them a lot of money to protect it. Right. But it would cost them more to lose that trademark.
Right.
Because we've seen a lot of companies that have lost that. I mean, my adjustable wrench in my toolbox called a Crescent wrench, it used to be a brand name made by Crescent. Circular saws. We used to call them skill saws because skill had the original patent on it. Now everybody makes a circular saw, but they can't call it a skill saw.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought a skill saw was just because you had to have skill to run the saw.
No, it's skill with one L. But anyway,
that is true though. You do have to have skill to run the skill saw.
If you don't, you lose. Cost your finger.
Yeah, you lose digits. Exactly.
But now this is where we're up against on this trade war. And I'm telling you, I think we're falling into what your friend from St. Louis called mercantilism, where the government basically controls the market of goods because they're collecting a duty, they're collecting a tariff. And yes, it always gets passed along into the final price of a consumer, but some of them, it'll just price them out of viability and people will go without or come up with some other means of getting their needs met. So it will suppress the market.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. But for a purpose and hopefully temporarily to get other people to change their practices. Like I said, and like you said, if it was just us one-sided, it would be one thing.
Right.
But because it's more of a retaliatory thing and he has to show we're serious about this.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it is kind of dumb. It would be like, you know, for example, I have this. I would love to be a cinematographer, okay, or videographer, whatever you want to call it. It's like, what do you call it? Affirmative action. Okay. I've always thought of this. Okay. You take track and field. Okay. And you zoom in and you show them all lining up, and you got this whole row of these black athletes lined up, you know, ready, sprinters. It's 100 meters dash. And then the guy, on your mark, it's set, hits the gun, and they take off, and they're running for like 50 yards. And when they hit the 50-yard line, the camera pulls back, and there's some white guy who started at the 50-yard line. And he's just, you know, got a 10, well, he had a 50-yard head start. But you know, and he waits till they get to 25, and he takes off, and then he breaks the tape, and he's doing all of this, you know. or you see LeBron James coming down the court, and he's great at slam, and some white guy comes, just knocks the ball all the way off the court.
The trampoline.
Well, or he's on a ladder.
Yeah.
You know, and he just, you know, and that's kind of what I see here. That you know, you're handicapping America, you know, because we're just that much better at producing whatever we produce.
Yeah.
And so, but no, you can't do that to them over there, you know. So that's kind of
yeah. So I don't know. I mean, we had this big pitch back in the 80s that the media and the politicians, free trade, free trade, free trade. And Trump is saying, no, fair trade,
right.
Fair trade, fair trade. I ran into this, though, with then our Congressman, John Sullivan, because my wife had significant health needs that prevented her. This is before Obamacare. Nobody would insure her. And there was this high risk pool that was a joke because it didn't cover pharmaceuticals. Her medicines were costing me cash at the local Walgreens $600 a month. I then learned, thank God for the internet, I could order them out of Winnipeg,
right, Canadian,
for less than $300.
Right.
So I started doing that. Find out my own congressman, John Sullivan, who just a few years earlier was in my home, he's trying to crack down on that. He already shut down this kiosk thing up here at Fontana because they were just helping people get it. And all of a sudden they got hit with all these federal charges. They didn't do anything wrong, but it was the heavy-handedness of our pharmaceutical lobby. They didn't want us to be able to buy medicines out there. And I confronted John at a watch party, and he said, well, I just wanted to be safe. I said, it's made by the same company, in her case, Merck.
Right.
I said, the cell here. I said, John, I said, Canada only gives 7 years patent protection. We give 17. So for the last 10 years, we're still paying those proprietary prices because we've created a monopoly for them, or Canada got rid of it after 7 years.
Right.
So they have to drop down to compete with generics. I said, what's happening is me paying more here is subsidizing them selling the same product for a lot less than half. I'm subsidizing Canadian healthcare.
Right.
I said, I just want the same deal as the Canadians. And you can't fix that without fixing our U.S. Constitution sets our copyright at 17 years. You've got to have a global unification of that.
But then you run into a new problem.
What?
That is the corporations that like the 17-year patent.
Oh, yeah.
They want to keep it.
Right.
And a lot of them aren't even American anymore. You know, you have Teva, for example, the Israeli pharmaceutical.
Yes.
They make a lot of the stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and so it's an Israeli company, but they do a lot of business in America. And so I think what they do, they have their factories here, but they do all of their inventing and their research and everything in Israel.
Yes.
But then they manufacture it here, but because they can make more money on it here. And so, but they're just one of the many, you know, of the pharmaceuticals that are so expensive. Like I have migraines. I have the migraine problem. And like you, I used to get mine from Canada.
Yeah.
And this is what's crazy. I was so thrilled when I was able to get this migraine medicine for $10 a pill, because to get it here, it was $60 a pill. So $60 to get it in America, $10 to ship it in from Canada. And or in India, I could get it from India, but they were distributing through the West Indies or somewhere there, you know. And so I'd order it from the West Indies. But then I had to go through Canada. It was a Canadian drug company, but they would get it from West Indies. And
yes, they became global.
Right.
As a middleman.
Right. But which is silly, you know, which is kind of silly that you're circumventing the rules that you set up.
Yeah.
And instead of just drop all of your patent laws and your other laws that you have that are keeping people from being.
Well, yeah.
And this is what I hope Bobby Kennedy is able to work on.
Yeah, our copyright is set in our U.S. Constitution for 17 years.
It's in the Constitution.
It's in the Constitution.
I never.
And Eddie, I'm not saying drop it to 7.
Which amendment?
No, it's in the original.
The actual Constitution, not an amendment, or it was well, then we need an amendment. That should be where are we at 27? We need a 28th.
I think you should just remove it, make it statutory law.
Yeah, but you can't just remove something from the
It's an amendment. You amend to strike it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Which amendment is it?
It's not an amendment. It's in the original. You'd have to make an amendment to strike it.
That's what I was saying.
Yes.
That's what I.
Yeah.
What we have here is a failure to communicate.
So, but here's the thing, because if you make it statutory, then you allow the Congress and the executive branch to make it part of our treaty negotiations.
Right. But do you think, this is the problem that Trump is running into now. Is he going to face all the lobbyists? You know, our representatives being lobbied by no, we don't want to lower our
here's the thing.
Patent.
We were so removed when the Constitution was removed. I mean, it was weeks in a little wooden ship to get to Europe. We had to build our own economy here. So now, in this day that you can air flight something out of Europe and it'll be delivered the next day, hello FedEx, you know, we're in global economies. You got Alibaba, you got Amazon, you got all this stuff. And you now have a new dynamic that you have to adjust to. You just have to. And I think you make it part of your treaties. Now, here's another thing, Eddie. Our Constitution says that a treaty ratified by the Senate has the same effect as constitutional law. It supersedes any other statute. So maybe we have a way of doing that then, but you would have to make a global treaty on trademarks. And somehow we need to get, whether it's 7 years or 17, the point is you make everybody share the load of the R&D and stuff on a medicine. My other point on this, you're not going to get the honest truth as long as the number one advertiser on news shows, cable or broadcast, are the pharmaceuticals. They now have co-opted and own it.
Oh, yeah.
It's the same reason you'll never hear a story in the local TV or radio about gambling addiction problems from our local casinos, because they're not going to do that to their prime advertisers.
Right.
Okay. You have a corrupted, a prostituted news media.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, exactly. Sure. That is one of our big problems. And it all goes down to the root of all evil.
Yeah. I mean,
that almighty dollar, they're bought and they're paid for because they're the biggest advertisers. The two biggest advertisers are pharmaceuticals and cars.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, every time you turn in the evening, you can't get through any program without seeing a car commercial and a pharmaceutical commercial. You know, people dancing and having these wonderful lives, and and this drug here will take care of it. You know, you have whatever else. Yeah, we got a drug for it.
By the way, just to say on an aside on the whole casinos and gambling thing, after you left KFAQ morning show, Pat Campbell had me in studio once, and he was bad-mouthing OCPA, Johnson Smalls, because they were claiming racism in our compact that our legislature signed with the casinos, with the tribes. Yes. And I confronted Pat. Well, Pat's boss, KOTV, Griffin Communications, in tight with the Cherokees and that. And we went to break, and he looked at his text. He says, we got to go back to this. You just accused the tribes of Jim Crow laws. And we went back, and I said, no. I said, it's the legislature I'm upset. They sold away my rights for a cut from the tribes. The net result becomes a Jim Crow law. I said, black casinos matter, Pat. Truth. Yeah. And Pat dropped it, but he never invited me back again. And I think I don't think he had a choice in it.
Yeah, he might have been told we don't want him.
Oh, exactly. He was clearly dictated to. When Griffin took over, sadly, that was the end of talk radio at KFAQ. Yeah. It just was.
Yeah.
And Pat was in declining health at the time.
Well, yeah. But even, by the time I left, it was already declining. You could tell it was.
Channel 2 really let it die in the vine.
Right. That's when it started, because they started strangling.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it was. They hired these two guys that were fired at KRMG to come in as program director, and the I can't remember what his title was. It was worthless. Anyway, they came in, and they started just cracking down, and see, with me, as you know, that's why I ended up quitting, because I saw where I wasn't going to be controlled like that. But Pat, it was his livelihood. I mean, that was his living, so he had to toe the line.
Yeah, he uprooted, moved across the United States for it, and this was his dream.
Right.
Tammy Marler left. I mean, early on in 14-15, when Tammy came out, it was looking like this is going to be a good thing. This Scripps Howard, buying them out.
Right. But the best was Journal Broadcasting, who had it. And they're a national syndicator, and they basically left it.
Was it Brian Gann was with them then?
Yeah, he was the program director.
That was the
station manager. Was a good guy. Randy, I can't remember his last name. He moved to Nashville.
Yeah.
But so many, it just came that way.
Yeah. But anyway, so we're being lied to by our media. And another way we're being lied is the government narratives. I'm now realizing how much the government controlled the media narratives on so many globalist stories. I remember, I'm now learning that it was our CIA that orchestrated the Ukraine revolution in 2014. And it was spun to us completely different at the time. Same thing with the Iraqi war. And that was the globalists, which includes the Clintons and the Bushes.
Yeah, it was that. What's that lady's name?
Well, Victoria Nuland was part of that.
Victoria Nuland. In fact, there's tape of her behind these things. If you want to look, Google Victoria Nuland, and you can read about these different stories about all of the. How does especially a woman get that evil worldwide?
Well, Hillary Clinton was the same way. Remember?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But Hillary is more overt. But see, Hillary had a personal, it was all about Hillary and the Clintons, whereas Victoria Nuland was kind of behind the scenes. She was just doing a job, but seemed like she was enjoying that job, doing those things.
Yeah.
And I mean, just.
But Condi Rice was lying to us just as much as Colin Powell was lying to us. That whole globalist bunch. I mean, they had a deal where Muammar Gaddafi was going to be exiled to another country. It was going to be a peaceful transition. And Hillary nixed it. Mm-hmm. She wanted him murdered. She literally did the cutthroat sign, hand across there. She wanted him dead. She didn't want him to be able to tell his side of any story.
Right, exactly.
And this is why, remember how much Tucker Carlson got the ire of the legacy media for going to Russia and sitting down with Putin? They didn't want Putin to be unfiltered.
Right. To tell his side of the story. Right.
Yeah. Now, there's a lot of things Tucker says I don't want to believe his narrative either, but somewhere in the middle there's the truth.
Oh yeah. And you can see it, and the crazy thing is, you look at life in Russia, the daily life in Moscow and some of these cities, and the overall health and welfare of the country. They've come so far.
Yes.
Because their country back prior to 2000, prior to Putin, let's say, it was poverty stricken.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, those people were living in just downright poverty.
Yeah.
But he has brought that country up. So why do we have, I'll tell you, I used to hate Russia. I mean, hate it with a passion.
You're supposed to.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it was my Catholic upbringing.
Okay.
Because the communists, they persecuted the priests and
they deserved
murdered
the
and killed.
yes.
Right. But then, what changed me, what first got me thinking, I was living in Amsterdam and Sting came out with the Russians love their children too.
Yeah.
That's all. It's amazing how not many songs really affect me or cause, but that one really made me think that Russians love their children too, to think about how I thought about the Russian people.
Yeah.
What type of people they are.
One of my greatest academic achievements in high school was I actually read the book One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, the Alexander Solzhenitsyn book about the labor camps in Siberia. He got that book smuggled out of the country so that they couldn't just make him disappear. He finally was exiled. He came to the United States. I think he settled either in Vermont or New Hampshire. But as soon as the Soviet Union fell, he went back. And he refused to become a tool of NATO and the West in the propaganda wars. He said, I believe Russia will put off communism, Marxism, and come back to God. He really believed that. And I read a recent story. He wrote a great article just a few months ago, and he's still living in Russia. But he's just talking about, the problems. And I realized why it was such an amazing feat that as a 15-year-old, I read his book. He's a hard writer to follow. Long sentences, very prepositional phrase after another. But here's the thing, Eddie, we've got to have more than one source and more than one world viewpoint we listen to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. And that's what caused me to kind of take, I would call it a more neutral position on Ukraine. I'm not for Russia going in and taking over Ukraine. Definitely, I don't want that.
There's no good guy in the battle.
No, but I don't want to be manipulated into attacking Russia because some dictator in Ukraine, in a country that is known to be racist. I'm not, me, I'm not a really racist, but they are. It's known that it's one of the most racist countries in the world. Let's put it this way, ethnocentric.
Who are you referring to?
The Ukrainians.
Ukrainians.
Yeah, ethnocentric countries on the planet, okay? And not just the average Ukrainian, but they're actually these groups or gangs within the country that make our Ku Klux Klan look like kindergartners.
Okay. Remember when the war first started? He talked about the Nazis. Putin did, about the Nazis that run Ukraine.
Yeah, they are there, and because I've seen reports, reporters that have gone in and interviewed and seen, and done exposés. So there are no good guys here.
Yeah,
there are no good guys. I call it a turf war. It is. It's nothing more than a large scale turf war.
Yeah,
and so. And we don't need to be getting into it, especially when it can escalate into a world war versus a territorial war.
Yeah, and we're just being jerked around.
Yep.
Speaking of that, Marine Le Pen.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
This is such a major issue. Eddie, I told you a few weeks ago, and I repeated it, that we should renegotiate NATO and just replace it with something different. Now I'm at the point we must cancel our membership in NATO because, and this isn't just
in
France,
protest, right?
Okay, a number of the EU nations, what you see happening in Romania, what you see happening in Germany, where the most popular group, they're all boycotting them and trashing them. And then you see what's happening in England, guys like Tommy Robinson being thrown in jail and trumped up charges because he's trying to expose the fact that they're allowing the Muslim immigrants to have rape parties. And if the girls say anything, they get locked up. It's corruption. And Eddie, I understand this. NATO came about at the end of World War II because we had our fill of Nazis and we didn't want the Soviets to be the next Adolf Hitler. You know what? We are now in a treaty with a series of Adolf Hitlers right. By degrees. Okay.
Yeah.
They don't have concentration camps yet.
No, I agree with you. And I think we talked about last week. Or either last week or week before.
Yeah, the week before.
The new alliance, the new alliance of nations where Greece, Italy are more in alliance, and Hungary from Europe are in alliance with us. And Poland, I think, is starting to lean more towards that.
Yeah.
It's so funny how the Eastern European nations are starting to become the freest nation.
Yes.
Who would have ever thought about
Hungary
that?
would be an awesome place to live if I were European.
All the movies, the commercials, anything I see about Budapest and Hungary, it's almost idyllic. It's just clean,
it's beautiful,
beautiful. Yeah, I mean,
France, Paris has nothing on Budapest as far as I'm concerned.
No.
But here's the thing. You signed this treaty 80 years ago now, NATO? You assume that France will always have the French values of that at that time, and England. Now, Germany was the loot we split up. The Soviets got 3/5, right? We got 2/5 of Germany. And now all of a sudden it's a different reality. So I go back to George Washington's warning. Be careful not to be entangled in the wars of Europe.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah. Because this is the thing. We're entangled with a bunch of tyrants right now.
Well, and here's what really bothers me, Dave, that they don't like us.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like us.
I don't think the French ever really did.
No. And here's the reason. the French don't like anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, the French don't like anybody, and especially don't come in and tell us what to do. You helped us, thanks, bye.
It's an arrogant conceit, isn't it?
Now, the Germans are a little different. The Germans still think they're the master race.
Yes, they do.
They really do.
But they have some compassion for you, bless your heart.
Well, it's because the American military ruled the place back then. You know, I don't know if I've told the story, but when I was born, the whole Nuremberg area, the army wasn't integrated.
Right.
So it was all black soldiers. So what are you going to do? You know, and they weren't kind. I mean, they weren't kind. You know, if they would take a German.
There was one guy who was kind to a young gal that
you're always going in a different direction. What I'm talking about, if like my dad would tell me stories about how they would take over the whole town in Nuremberg at night, and they'd be driving the cable cars and throwing people off. You know, if they didn't like you,
your dad's buddies did that.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
oh yeah. You know, they beat somebody up on the street if they looked at them wrong. I mean, we were not nice, the kindest people to the Germans.
Yeah.
Well, it's because they were the super race,
especially that area.
Right. Bavaria was the Aryan, you know, headquarters, the capitals. And so they, and there were still a lot of Nazis. In fact, my uncle, it used to be funny. I had another, I guess, a cousin, and we went to visit him.
Yeah.
And my uncle, he was just crazy. My mother's brother. We went to the guy, and when the guy turned around, my uncle said, Nazi. he was lipping Nazi, big Nazi. so I even had relatives, I guess, that were big Nazis, you know. And but my uncle, he was just so funny because he was a nut. He was a funny guy, you know. Yeah. He never my whole family they never. In fact, I may have told this how my grandmother. She used to be on the corners giving out anti-Nazi papers, and the Gestapo came by and took her papers and
burned them,
put lighter and burned them right in front of her. And my mom was a little girl at the time, but anyway, but the Germans, they have never outgrown, and it's not a Nazi thing. It's just the type of people they are.
Well, they're proud Germans.
That pride, exactly. That they are still supposed to be a super race, or they're supposed to rule or feel important, and America has just belittled them. You know, we just make them feel like dogs, you know, and it's true. I mean, America has not been kind to Germany, let's put it that way. So, but they've gone overboard. So you got that hatred there, the French who hate everybody, the British who now is starting to surface all the way back to the Revolutionary War in War of 1812. You know, we're the little brother that is kicking your butt, you know, that whole thing. So those are the three main countries right now that are against the United States in Europe. Those three, England, Germany, and France. And the others are just along for the ride.
Yeah.
And the Eastern Europeans, they still see America as the liberators of Eastern Europe.
But this nationalism that Trump's identified with, Marine Le Pen and several others, Viktor Orban and stuff, and Nigel Farage.
Italy is on that side as well.
And
Greece,
it's a little bit safer there, right? But Nigel Farage, like a year and a half ago, all of a sudden, all the banks decided to close his accounts. He could not do banking, and the government did nothing about it.
Well, go back to Marie Le Pen. She was arrested.
Yeah.
And on trumped up charges.
Oh, very.
So, I mean, just think about it, though.
Well,
at least Trump was never arrested. This shows what our system of government is like compared to the government of France.
So here's the important thing. You have to understand, it's not just whether or not the charges are legitimate and proven. You also have to show a uniform application of justice where they're enforced equally on everyone. Because if you're only going after the one guy, it would be like the cop at the corner and everybody goes to a rolling stop because the four-way intersection is empty and they do nothing about it. But as soon as the guy who's challenging the mayor goes to the same rolling stop, they've got him cuffed and in the back seat.
Yeah. And if you look at Germany, they had the elections. And this newer party, which is kind of like our Republican Party, they're more of a nationalist party. They now have vacated their win and saying, we don't care, it doesn't count in Germany.
Well, yeah, the AfD, Alliance
AfD,
for Deutschland, they're the ones that they said, we won't have anything to do with it. It's a woman who's actually the head of it.
Just like in France.
But these other people, they had to form a coalition. Are you saying they failed to get their coalition?
Yeah. Yeah. So the CSU.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the CSU has pretty much squeezed them out.
Yeah. They flat out boycott them. They said, we will never have anything to do with them.
Right. And they're branding them as Nazis. And there's nothing Nazi. See, this is what's so crazy. It's just like in America, we've gotten the same thing. The left here wants to brand everybody that's against the liberalism, the progressive movement. You're a Nazi,
or racist,
racist, and Nazi. You know, you saw where Tesla they're putting swastikas on. You know, it's just stupid. It has nothing to do with Nazi, which people don't even understand what Nazi means. But so that's going on over there. So you got Germany, France. So you got Marie Le Pen there. The what is it? ADP or
AFD.
AFD. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then there was somewhere else where they vacated. Oh, Romania. Romania is where they arrested.
Yeah, he's in prison.
The guy who
that
won.
was after the election. They canceled it when they saw the results.
Right.
That he'd won.
Right. So these are things that are going on in Europe. So Europe's in a pretty bad state. And Dave, you know what's the saddest thing about it? These are the countries we fought and died to keep free.
Yes.
These are the ones we fought to keep free. And they're as bad as the ones we fought to keep them free from.
Yeah.
It's just a sad state of affairs.
Yeah. Alice Vendel
that's her
is the woman who's kind of the spokesperson and leader. She's co-leader with Tino Kruppala. But anyway, and nicest lady, she's an attorney, I guess. And they just won't have any. They would rather have no government than allow her even to be part of a coalition. Right.
And it's all it is. You need to understand all of these things that are going on. It's globalists that are doing this. It's the same people that run our Democrat Party here.
But they're the least tolerant.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. They're the least tolerant. They talk about tolerance and this and that, but it's all just BS.
Look what Trump did. Last summer, I watched the Libertarians had their national convention. They still had their candidate, but Trump said, hey, can I come talk to you? They wouldn't let him speak at their convention. So he rented the hall next door. And as soon as they adjourned, they all went in. Dave Smith, who's a comedian, he was on with Joe Rogan just yesterday. I listened to his podcast. He's a libertarian, a sharp guy, very sharp guy. He said, I voted for Trump as a libertarian leader. He says he was the right guy at the right time. Now, he doesn't agree with a lot of what Trump's doing right now.
Right.
Because the libertarian believe in very, very scaled back government,
right.
you know. But This is the thing. Trump got the libertarians to a large degree, not officially, but to a large degree to buy in. He got a lifelong classic Democrat icon, Bobby Kennedy. He's not the only one. A number of people who were prominent homosexuals that are now, one of them's on his budget, and then Rick Cornell's one of his top, most trusted special envoys. So Trump is being what the Democrat claims they are.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And somebody said, actually, it's Joe Rogan and Dave Smith were talking about this yesterday. People painting swastikas on Teslas. He says, now think of it. The bulk of electric car owners are people who identify with the, green, energy and got to save the planet. And the only thing that's going to save the planet is electric vehicles rather than fossil fuels. And these people are showing they never believed it because they've turned violent and are destroying the very thing that's the emblem of what they think is our salvation.
Yeah.
If the guy running the company doesn't have the right beliefs and advocacy, you'll destroy his stuff. And and using fossil fuels to destroy it.
Yeah. See, that's what's so funny about it. That's what's really funny about it. They're such hypocrites. They're all for the electric vehicles, then they're running around burning and defacing Teslas.
Yeah.
It's we want our way. If we don't get our way, we'll destroy your way.
Yeah.
We'll burn it down just to keep you from having your way. So if we don't get our way.
Yeah. So the climate change narrative, this theory, the reason Tucker Carlson's so skeptical, he says, because all of their solutions empower them. And all of a sudden, a guy who's kind of at the leading forefront, the most successful electric car, that's commercially viable. The guy who's running the country doesn't have the right politics, so you're willing to destroy it. They never believed in it to begin with. It was just
that shows exactly.
It was just a front for their political advancement. The same way women's issues used to be their big thing.
Yeah.
Now transgenders is more important.
Pick an issue. Black.
Yeah.
Women. Gays. Which is women, and then gays. No, it's gays. That's so yesterday. We're into trans.
Yeah.
Now. We're into this.
Not just Biden, but Obama. Last summer, Obama's just ridiculing black men, just demeaning them.
Yeah.
There's some runaway slaves, and Biden saying if you don't vote Democrat, you ain't black.
Yeah. Well, do you remember? It reminds me of the hippie movement. Maybe you were a little too young for that.
No. I had a commune right next door, rented an upstairs apartment.
Yeah, but you might have come in at the tail end because what year were you born?
In 71, I was in fourth grade and had a bunch, 20 people living upstairs in a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah, you were at the tail end, very tail end.
71?
Yeah, if you were in the fourth grade,
mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, you were way back there.
Well, 71 was that the tail end?
Yes, that was the tail end. Yeah, in fact, I would probably venture to say probably 70 was the end of the really good times. No, the hippie movement, I believe, started out as a legit and genuine movement. Mm-hmm. And, the whole love, peace, mm-hmm. All of that thing. And then the sinfulness of man came in. You got the people that came in that were corrupt from the beginning and figured out a way to co-opt it. Hey, I can get some free sex out of this thing, mm-hmm. free drugs. I've got clients here that I can sell stuff to make money off. And, and so you had people that were really fake hippies because they were doing it for their own good. Just like the race pimps in the Black community, in every group, the homosexual community. I'm sure they have
race baiters.
They have their own deal, gay baiters, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, you have that group of people, and it totally corrupted the whole hippie movement, and that's what killed it, because eventually everybody, it went two ways. The people who were honestly seeking that whole thing, a great number of them ended up getting saved and becoming Christian.
Yeah, and then John Kerry decided to turn it into politics. Remember, he come back from the war because he was an anti-war guy.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of.
Yeah, see, that was a whole different deal.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, see, anti-war wasn't really a hippie thing.
Oh, okay.
The anti-war just used. Again, that was one of the things that messed it up.
Overlap, though. They're separate, but they kind of overlapped as far as the
time period. Yes, yeah. But what I'm saying is, what they did, they used the heart of the movement.
Yes.
Who doesn't believe in peace? So they tried to co-opt that to use it. They went into the Black movement, got Muhammad Ali, got Martin Luther King into the anti-war movement. Remember, Muhammad Ali refused to go into the army. He refused to be drafted.
Lost his title.
Lost his title, all that. And so it created this groundswell anti-war movement. That wasn't really the hippies. Mm-hmm. The hippies were apolitical. They didn't care. They just wanted to live in peace and harmony with people, love the land, love one another, and everything like that. I mean, some of those truly beautiful people. I mean, it's really nice. Mm-hmm. So like what I'm saying, the whole idea was right, but the sinfulness of man just totally destroyed the whole heart of what the movement was about. And it's like everything else, it just destroyed it. So it never recovered.
I do want to say, just to wrap up on this NATO thing, we just have to walk away, because remember, we sent J.D. Vance over there before the whole Marine Le Pen thing and warned him, like, really, you think you're a democracy when you're this weak?
Yeah.
And then they pull this. This is an in-your-face to J.D. Vance and to his Trump administration, what France has done here.
The main two agitators in this, I believe, are England and France.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Germany's too weak. In fact, remember, Scholz left. They had that meeting. What was the event? Trump had done something. And then I think, it was as soon as that mess up, Zelensky, the disaster at the Oval Office, then they had a meeting. Those three countries met. And Scholz was facing elections that weekend. He finally left the meeting. So I think, you basically have England and France right now.
Right.
And the funny thing, this is an aside. Candace Owens, she's way bigger now. All of her YouTube podcasts have more viewership than any of the cable news networks. Joe Rogan was talking about it, Dave Smith. And she's going hog wild on a lot of conspiracies, one of which is, Macron has a partner, I'll call it that, who's reports as a much older woman.
Yeah.
And she thinks that this older woman's actually a man. And Joe Rogan says, I believe it. Evidently, she's put a case. I've got to dig that up and find out, because I'm listening to this thing late last night. And okay, this is on my to-do list.
I have to be honest. One thing I believe God has given me is a gift of discernment. Mm-hmm. And I'm not always right. I will confess. Mm-hmm. I'm occasionally wrong. Mm-hmm. But with Candace Owen, I've just never, I can't say I don't like her. That's ungodly of me, unchristian.
Well, you're suspicious.
Yeah, I've never trusted her.
Yeah.
there's something just did not feel right about her. And what really turned me off, do you remember this black young woman who ran for Congress in Baltimore?
So Maya Love? No.
No. She was in Utah.
Okay.
She's gone. She turned out to be just another Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
But no, this is I cannot think of her name now. Anyway, there's this woman who had this great campaign commercial where she was walking through the ghetto, looking around, and she would talk as she was walking, just showing how messed up it was and everything. But anyway, and Candace Owen basically accused her of being a prostitute and stuff, just coming down.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, and it's like Candace Owen is always picking fights with other conservatives. It's like, I'm not going to have another black woman take over the spot of being the conservative black woman that, that everybody looks at. It was almost like it would be like me if some other black conservative person came around and I started just talking bad about them because they're another black.
You're on to something here. Pat Buchanan was often accused of being that, quote, flamethrower, right? And it did him well from a business model as a talking head, as,
So he would talk bad about other.
No, he would use just more red meat language.
I see.
Pat was a wordsmith. Fantastic. Right. But I'll call to mind Ann Coulter as an example. Yeah. There's certain people that know that if they can throw enough red meat, they'll get better book deals. They'll get better, terms for being a, consultant to the cable news companies. But eventually they will go too far. And then they'll lose their credibility, lose their contracts. And I think Ann Coulter's way past that.
Yeah, I think you're right. But as far as Candace, it's not just the throwing the red meat or what she talks about. It's the way she, to me, the straw that broke the camel's back was when she went after this girl in Baltimore. Yeah, that was the thing, because that was uncalled for. It was exactly the girl actually, sued her, and then she apologized and everything went away, and all. But it was totally uncalled for, just because you want to be. There's not room for two of us in this. Oh, come on, No,
Eddie, without naming names, you and I have seen up front certain people who want political power and influence. And if they can't find a demon to rally their forces against, they'll create one. Right. And they'll destroy reputations of good people who are no threat to them, but they see them as a potential threat. So they will preemptively destroy a person. Yeah. I've been the subject of that. I'm sure you have, and this is a problem. We have this fine, path to walk here of calling things out, being perceptive and everything, but maintain your credibility and maintain your decency.
Yeah. It's interesting because the other night, because, it's funny because we have, a couple of black political activists. One is now a city councilor, and one was his campaign manager that I came against pretty strongly. Mm-hmm. And people might think, oh, look at him, he's one to talk. Look what he's done over here. Mm-hmm. But see, it's not, I could care less. In fact, at the other night at Mike Mazzei's event the other night, we were really amazed. It was really good to see. There were several young black political activists or people in there. I mean, my thing is this, look, I've got 20 some years left on this earth, probably, realistically. And I've got to stick with, but so I'm always looking for authenticity and so I see these different young black activist people, and I'm always hoping, Lord, is this the one? Is this the one? No, seriously, somebody that I can really believe in.
He who you've heard of, or shall we yet look for another? Is that what John's disciples said to Jesus?
Yeah, kind of. But people that I can really, really believe in, and to make a difference. Mm-hmm. That's not in it for them. That is truly in, and particularly that are going to make an impact on the Black community. Mm-hmm. But do it in a way where it's no nonsense. We're not going to play your game, but I care for you. I'm doing this. It may hurt, the things I'm saying, the things I'm doing, it may hurt, but you need to hear it. Mm-hmm. It's like your dad, your uncle, your favorite uncle that isn't afraid to tell you that haircut looks ridiculous, or you need to go. You're
pretty good at being blunt, Eddie.
Well, yeah. Yeah. And so that's all I'm ever looking for is just like Trump. Mm-hmm. Like we getting back to the thing. I didn't like what he was saying. I still don't like a lot of what he says, but I know I can trust the guy.
Yeah.
That when it comes to the things that matter, he can sound like an idiot, say the stupidest, dumbest things, about him personally. A lot of it times it's tongue in cheek and things. Excuse me.
Yeah. Well,
but overall, when it comes to the really important stuff, I feel I can trust the man. Mm-hmm. And there's certain people that are like that, locally, statewide, nationally. And that's what I'm always looking for is authenticity and honesty in people that we can trust. And and at some point, we've got some really good Black representatives that we don't even know about or see. It's because they're not in front of a microphone all the time. Texas has several.
Yeah.
Every time I turn around, there's a new one. I say, oh, Texas elected them, or somebody out of Utah or New York or somewhere, all these Republicans. And you're going to get more. I met a guy the other night from Wagner who ran against Kevin Hearn as a Democrat, but he's now a Black Republican.
Okay.
He's a Republican. He's Black. He's always been Black, but he's now he's now Black. He's always been a Republican. He's Black now. No, yeah. I'm just kidding. But and so, I want to get to know him. See, okay, you say you switched parties, and but let's see what you're really about.
You and I have a mutual friend. I don't think either of us are all that close. I think I'll just say his name, David Fowler.
Yeah.
David was very close working with Edwin Lewis Cole, who books about Christian manhood, what God calls you to be as a man, as a Christian. And David was telling me one day, he says, I think it was him or somebody, says, I can talk to a guy for 20 minutes and know whether or not he had a father's influence in his life.
Wow.
And Eddie, you talk about your dad so much with reverence. Not that he's a perfect guy, but he was a role model. And you had that. And a lot of, men, Black men who served like your dad did post-World War II, before the military was even integrated. But they escaped that, great society thing that, Lyndon Johnson thought he was doing as a favor to the Black man, that resulted in much higher divorce rates.
Yeah.
And so many young Black men who never had a father figure. And I think that's one of the things that I know David has talked about. David Fowler's is, you got to have a father. God will give you somebody if your biological father wasn't there,
Right.
but you have to have that. And for many, the military actually helped them become the man they needed to be. And I don't know, because I hear you talking about politicians, people that you admire. Take Trump, for instance. I had no idea just how impressive of a father he was. No idea.
Yeah, I know. Nobody did, because he was always a playboy, and he was this New York socialite and billionaire, and then
Yeah.
and
But
then
at
all this
home, I mean, my goodness, to hear Eric and Donald talk about it, he had those guys working out at construction sites. He had those guys, involved in things. Yes, his relationships with women, marriage is falling apart. That's not anything to write home about. But I don't hear him trying to make excuses for it.
Right.
And I just, he lived a teetotaler life.
Yeah, that was the surprising thing to me, that he
I know.
he never drank.
He and I are still working on you, Eddie. Just teasing. Oh, I got my dig in. Now I can go home.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Just have a little toke every now and then.
Yeah. No.
No, that's you.
No, I advocate for it for veterans as a medicine, but by God, the last time I had anything like that was still the 70s.
Oh, he's admitting it. Yeah.
My 16th birthday. Guess what? My Christmas, my 17th Christmas was an ounce. For my brother.
Give us an ounce
for my brother,
of weed.
Yes,
that's funny.
His Columbia Sticky Bud.
Whoa, he's even naming names now.
A week after I got saved, I'm cleaning out my car Saturday morning, and there's a glove box. I pulled that out and I looked at it, and I had such a week in my new life in Christ. I can't believe it. This is so much in my past. I don't even feel like it's mine. When we heated our house a wood burning stove in the kitchen. Tossed that thing in, and my dad saw it. And that's when my dad really realized I was saved.
Right. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
He really knew I was serious. Yeah. Haven't looked back.
That's funny.
Haven't looked back.
Funny.
So anyway, we all have a past, Eddie.
Yes. I'm glad. Emphasis on past.
Yes.
Hey, okay, we'll finish up with this.
Yep.
The NCAA tournament wraps up this weekend.
Tonight.
Men and women.
Well,
Monday night for the men. Men is Monday.
But the semifinals are tonight.
Right. Semis start tonight. Right. And I am now, I'm pulling for Houston, of course, Big 12 to show the SEC something. Of course, we're playing Duke, aren't we? Or no,
Duke.
Yeah.
And Duke's favored by 5.5.
You know what? No, we're not playing Duke. Houston's not playing Duke. It's because oh, yeah, you're right. The two SEC teams are playing each other.
So there will be an SEC in the finals.
There will be an SEC in the final. Right. No, that's good. That you won't have two in the final. Right. Yeah, it's Duke and Houston. That's right. And then in the women's semi is tomorrow, and then the final later in the week.
No, actually, I think they had their finalists last night, and then Sunday.
Usually. I don't think. Maybe you're right. I always thought the women's final was after the men.
They did, and it used to be a Friday-Sunday game for the guys. Now I think they switched it with the women.
Let's see who's right.
All right, so women's college schedule. No, that ain't right. Saturday, Friday.
Because I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, so you had South Carolina beat Texas.
Oh, they beat Texas.
Yes, and UConn beat UCLA, dominated UCLA. 34-point win, UConn.
Oh, UConn won.
UConn dominated.
Did Paige Belcher break the record, or they'll expect her to beat Caitlin Clark's record here?
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
But Sunday will be
so Sunday.
UConn and South Carolina.
So it is Sunday, okay.
Yes. It'll be 2:00. It'll be on ABC, it says. Oh, by the way, so this Final Four is on CBS. I've been complaining ESPN controlled everything. No, last weekend I got to watch some Sunday games on CBS.
Right. The men on CBS, I guess the women on ABC.
Yeah. So anyway, so ESPN just bought the round of 64, that bunch.
Well, I'm glad this is almost over because the next thing will be, are you ready for some football? It's the draft is the next big event.
Yeah. And then, I've become a real fan of college women's softball, and OU moved down to 3.
Oh, they lost some?
They did. They had a tough skid. I think it was in Tennessee. So Texas is number 1, Florida number 2 right now.
Yeah. Well, OU will be back. They'll get them into shape. Towards the end of the season, they'll.
Yeah, but in men's baseball and women's softball, SEC is so dominant.
Yeah.
7 of the top 10 baseball teams are SEC.
7.
7 of the 10 top. The 7 of the top 10.
Probably weather has something to do with it.
You have a huge advantage. Huge advantage. I remember I was going to Rama my first year, and there was this massive spring windstorm, kind of like we had, gusts up to 70 miles an hour. I'll go over to ORU after I close the store. I'm working at night manager because the University of Minnesota is playing ORU. First game, I get there for the bottom of the first inning, and it's 17-0 because all I had to do is pop that ball up in the air and the wind just carried it over the fence. But I was a Minnesota fan. But see, you had to go on south road trips early on because there's still snow.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we got snow in the forecast for tomorrow.
Really?
Yeah, in Tulsa.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a trifecta out there now. It's cold, it's wet, and it's windy, and those are worse than snow.
Yeah.
If you have no wind and snow, it's wonderful.
No, it's going to get cold enough to snow.
Right. But
overnight.
If you have rain and windy, cold, rain, that's the nasty, that's the worst. Probably Wisconsin, Minnesota weather right there.
Yeah.
What you got outside.
Yep. So anyway, it's a crazy basketball year, and I hope Houston represents well because I like you, I'm a Big 12 fan. Yeah. Not real proud of OU going after the money and bailing to the SEC.
Yeah.
But something's going to change.
Yeah, we'll see. And the Panthers, Florida Panthers, they've moved out of the first place. I think they're in second, or they may have dropped down to third too. But they've got a lot of injuries right now. Yeah. Hockey, we're speaking hockey right now. But we'll see when they get their full squad back. The thing about, what I don't like about basketball and hockey, they have 2 seasons. You have the regular season and you have a champion. Because the President's Cup, you win if you win the regular season, you're first place. But that doesn't mean anything, really. Yeah. I mean, the big thing is the Stanley Cup.
Absolutely.
And the Stanley Cup is the second season, which only, 8 teams, I guess, 8 or 10 teams get to play for the Stanley Cup in the playoffs.
Sure.
So you got to be in the top. I think it's 5. One's a wild card. Then you got the 4 other teams. And so that second season is, in fact, the Panthers, when the first year, 2 years ago, they were a wild card.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they went all the way to the finals against Las Vegas where they lost.
That's right.
So, but it makes a long season.
Yeah, in basketball, they let too many in their playoff. Remember baseball, you had to win your division, and there's like 12 teams in there's an East and a West. Right. In both the NL and AL, only 4 teams made the playoff.
Then you have the 14 playoff, right? And that's it. Right. When you have 5 teams in playing off.
You're 4th place and you're still in the playoffs?
Right.
Really? Come on.
And what was it? Playoffs.
Yeah, I know. But you know what it's about? It's about the dollar.
It is. That's exactly.
Why do you think NFL went from 12 games up to 17?
Yeah. I mean, you would think with 85 games, though, compared to the 16 that the NFL had, you would think that 85 games, you should have enough money.
Yeah, baseball's even more.
Yeah,
play over
it's
100.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. And I thought, well, at least it's a short playoffs. But also, the NHL, one of the things they did once the Olympic Committee allowed for pro hockey players in, they shut down the league during the Olympics on those years.
Right.
And I thought that's a cool
which
thing.
will be next year. We have the Winter Olympics next year again.
Yeah. Yeah, so that'd be fun.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you for hanging with Dave and I with our own frivolous discussion. Hey, we thank again Mike Mazzei for being with us at the beginning, and we want to continue bringing candidates and different issues to your attention. If you will contact us at freshblack.coffee, we'll be happy to hear from you and suggestions you might have, like shut up, Eddie, shut up, Dave. You know, those kind of things. Anything, topics you want to hear about, and things like that. But anyway, we thank you for following us, and hope we may continue. We thank you, and God bless everyone. Right. Yeah.